G'day everyone, and welcome along to You Say We Draw today. We're every Saturday at 7 p.m. London time and about 3 p.m. New York, give or take time zones, and silly clock in Sydney, Australia. We spend some time together drawing on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. You say what to draw in the chat, and we draw it. Today's theme is architecture, so interpret that as you wish. Already seen some great suggestions coming in the chat there. If you stumbled across this and never seen me before, welcome along. I'm an artist based in London, England, on all social media. The best place to check me out is on my website, mattelder.com, and you can subscribe there and be alerted of new content, my artwork, when I stream, all those sorts of things. And just get this to come along here. Oh, that's freaking out. The joys of live. So yeah, being an architecture stream, just sort of pull up one sort of image to get it into the moon. But then this show is also sponsored by McCatson.com Holiday Homes, just 75 minutes east of London, UK. Great for a holiday, weekend getaway, or a staycation. High-spec apartments with lots of great restaurants and bars in the area, along with a Lego wall. Visit McCatson.com for more details. My streams are drama-free zones with family-friendly content, so please be respectful in the chat. No bullying, triggering, or profanities. And today, we're going to be a huge shout out. We're going to have a special guest along with us, and I'll bring them in a moment. It's great to be able to share the space with somebody else and get some drawings and do everything that everybody is going to be looking forward to seeing. Just make sure, and the usual sort of thing, if you like what you see, don't be afraid to hit that thumbs up button and or subscribe to the channel. And my guest will be in just very shortly. And let's just have a quick little look and see out there in the chat. We've got some people who've been along already. Bart, great to see you along. And Tassie and Mr. Hinkle Draws, Juan, welcome along. Mr. Blue, Mutant, hope that you're going well. Homework's not snowing you under too much. Mr. Blue as well. Space Odyssey, Cabbage Face, great to see you in as well. And Brixish and John Rosie. I think got a lot of people in so far. And let's just see if I can flick this across now and switch the screens. Where are we at? I'll stop doing the share with that in there. So here we are, ready to go. And I think it was back in stream number 3. I did castles, and ever since then I've sort of wanted to come around and do another architecture stream. And then I was thinking about doing it, and it's like, who do I know in the community who also likes architecture? And we could talk a lot about architecture, and somebody sprang to mind, and then very much so, then I was thinking, wait a minute, architects also know how to draw. So I asked them if they want to draw, and this person has come along and is a great YouTuber, and one of the first videos of theirs which I saw was actually looking at the Parisian restaurant, the Lego building Modular, and looking at that from an architect's point of view. And I just thought that was a fantastic idea. So definitely check her out. And we have joining us is Claire, also known as the Plastic Architect. How are you going?
Hi, I'm good. Sorry, I was on mute. So excited to do this. Really nervous. Definitely really nervous.
Yeah. No, it's cool. It's quite chill. I mean, my streams, if something doesn't go wrong, then we just got to wait for it to happen. So, yeah, we just sort of relax there. Also got Brett Spills in as well. Great to see you along. So yeah, and so anyone who doesn't know, obviously Plastic Architect, being an architect. And how are you going today?
I'm good. Hung up some minifigure display cases, so I feel really accomplished for a Saturday morning. And really looking forward to hanging out and having a good like early afternoon with you.
Yeah, because you guys, you're West Coast America, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm in San Francisco, so it's just afternoon here.
Yeah, and it's 7 after 7 in the UK at the moment, and then I think later on tonight all the clocks start doing weird things, so it goes weird.
Yeah, and then I think we're back to normal, which is an 8-hour difference, I think.
Yeah, it's because with having family in Australia and things like that too, it's their clocks go one way and ours go the other. So all of a sudden, rather than being 9 hours difference, it becomes 11 hours difference, and it's just weird.
Very weird. Yeah, exactly. I think there's also like parts of the U.S. that like their clocks don't change anyway. It's all over the place, but I like it. Some people react really poorly, but I always enjoy it for some reason. I think it's like a nice change. whenever it happens. Yeah.
It's for us. I think today it's the one where we lose the hour, so that's never the favorite one. It's where you gain the hour.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's all right then. The usual sort of thing. We'll get straight into it. I usually have when somebody comes on and draws, they can pick the first one, and so I think if you want to sort of say what the first one might be.
Sure. Yeah, it might be a little academic-y, annoying, but when I was in architecture school like 10 years ago, it was like mid-century modern architecture was kind of the hot thing. And so Villa Savoye is kind of the the emblem of all mid-century architecture. It's like by Le Corbusier, and he's, the crow is what that means in French, but he's this kind of the father of mid-century modern architecture and modern architecture. So this is a home that he did for a private client ages ago, and now it's open as a museum. It's like outside of Paris and in Poissy, and it's pretty cool. Like it has, anyway, this is it. I can talk about this for a long time. I think I did a thesis like my sophomore year of college on it. So yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
No, it was interesting because we started to chat just before we obviously got going on the stream, and we could sort of see that we were going to start really geeking out on this sort of stuff. So just thought, for anyone else who hasn't seen this before, because I hadn't heard of it, but I'm always game to try new things. This is for anybody else who hasn't heard of. I'm sure I'm going to butcher the name as I always do. Corbusier.
Corbusier, yeah, it's a Swiss guy, and he's like, he's the one who, like, if you look at look at that building, there's like a lot of, it's very simple, it's very clean design. I'm trying not to like use exact terms, but like there's a lot of the elements that he started incorporating into architecture, like lots of windows and the use of white and negative space and things like that. And we see that now. So if you look, this is Australia's version, if it's like the negative one, the black one. But if you look at that, the white building, that was built in 1928. And if you look at modern architecture now, what people consider contemporary, it's the same. It's a lot of those same concepts. Like someone today would look at this building and be like, oh, that's too modern. Like it's too cold or something, kind of narrow-minded about it is my opinion on that. But this is from 1928. So a lot of people don't realize like how early on this contemporary architecture has been around.
Yeah. Certainly once you mentioned that, because it's around that time period, I'd be thinking more sort of Art Nouveau, and then with I suppose, is it 1920s Art Deco sort of started to become a thing? Or
I think so. Let me look into it. I can't remember. I can like when Art Deco. When I think of Art Deco, I just think of like Miami and New York and Barcelona. But yeah, I think it was. Let's see now. Let's see what the Spruce says about it, which is like not a real actual website. It's to buy stuff. Let's see. I think in 1920s and stuff. It's what you think of when you think of like the Roaring 20s, like the backdrop of it. You know what I mean? And I think in the US, it started really coming to light in the 30s. Yep. According to Britannica, that is correct.
Yeah. So it's that's the sort of thing, because I certainly, this sort of aesthetic I would have thought would have been 1950s. So to see it 30 years before that, that's quite, that's what you're saying, is really contemporary, and going for that real minimalist sort of look.
That's exactly it. Yeah. And then everything, so he would elevate everything. I definitely used to know a lot more about it, but the pilasters or the columns that are out at the front, those would create like passive heating and cooling for like the areas, especially cooling. So like during the summers, like a draft would be, underneath the house, kept in the shade, and, HVAC systems like just didn't exist back then. So passive heating and cooling was really important, which is why like a white house is really important. And there's also a Lego set of it. You can see right there. I wonder how much that is worth now. Yeah.
Let's just sort of see. Of course, it's funny that would come up. I'm sure if somebody in the chat might start eBaying or something like that.
I'm sure.
It'd be a bit of a fortune these days. So.
Yeah, I'm sure. Those architecture sets are crazy.
Yeah, they seem to be one of the few ones which generally hold their value and things like that. So, okay, yeah, cool. Alrighty then. Well, I'll just so everyone sort of knows sort of where we're going with things and what we're doing. Let's just get started with that. I probably should put that in the chat there, just so I can pin it for later on. And no, by all means, I mean, if you want to use the technical terms and things like that, that's
cool.
That's cool. That's fine.
Okay. Oh, I love Space Odyssey since it looks like a spaceship. I love it. Yeah, it definitely looks like a spaceship. There's something about it that looks like it's about to take off.
And go that way. So, yeah, let's start getting into it. So the other thing, and I know for we're going to, obviously being an architect session, it's going to lean heavy into it. So if people are a little bit shocked by that, then you might be at the wrong place for this one. But I know, let's just sort of take a step back. In Australia, at least, training to be an architect is actually quite a long process. Like it's usually like 5 or 6 years at a university level. What was your training like in the States, and what was the process there?
It was really similar. Like in, I started off school as a bioengineer. That's like what I thought I wanted to do, was like get into plastic surgery and skin regeneration and stuff, like totally on a different direction. So I spent 2 years doing that. And so then I switched my major to architecture, but I was at like a 4-year institution. And at the time there were, and there still are, there's like accredited and unaccredited architecture programs. And this was an unaccredited one. And so if I wanted to become licensed in almost most states, I would need an accredited degree. So I was kind of, my hands were tied and I had to go to graduate school. So I basically, and because I switched degrees, it took me 5 years to finish my undergrad versus I guess 4. So, and then my graduate school was 2.5 years, and that was like a shorter one. Some of the other ones are like 3 years. So for me, it was like a 7-year process, which is kind of typical. Now they did at the time, like if in high school, you want to be an architect, there are 5-year programs like in Texas and in California and stuff that are accredited. And then also the licensing boards have like changed it so that you can still get licensed in certain states without having the accredited degree. Usually you would need the accredited degree to take your exams, and that was like the barrier to entry. So that's a very long-winded process of saying same thing. It's a long process. No, it's always interesting to sort of see different countries, how they do different education standards and things. And the first time I heard that an architecture degree, at least in Australia, was like 5 years, and then it was like another 1 year of industry placement practice sort of thing before then you can sort of like sit your qualifying exams type thing. It's like, wow. Really? Yeah, that's the same thing. Yeah, you have to have around, it used to be like 5 years of work experience, like the total number of hours that it would add up to. They've definitely loosened it, but then at the end there's about 7 exams that you have to take. And then in certain states like California and New York, there's additional exams. Like there's an additional exam for both of those because of, especially in California, because of seismic issues. So.
Oh yeah, I completely sort of forgot about. Yeah, you guys get a lot more on the earthquake sort of side of things.
Yeah, and it's not even like our day-to-day, like the job. We need that earthquake knowledge. We just need enough to have the conversation with a structural engineer to understand like expansion joints and all that stuff, which is like essentially how buildings move, as the earth moves. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, because I'm actually qualified in civil engineering, and it was funny because when we were on the stream last night with Greg or whatever, and somebody said something, I think it may have been Greg, and he said, "Oh yeah, it needs to have structural integrity," and your comment was, "That's not my job," and it's like, this is that split between civil engineering and architecture. You make it look pretty, and then the structural engineers have to figure it out.
Yeah, that's basically it. Yeah, sort of. It's not that. I mean, I think it's different actually in different countries. So like in the U.S., because liability is such a huge thing. You know, everybody sues everybody and their mom here, that like the majority of our jobs have turned into, you know, whose role is what. And as the architect, you're really the project manager, and in a sense of like, you know, kind of corralling and herding all the cats, like the civil engineers, the mechanical engineers, the plumbing engineer, all of these people, right? The pool designer, the landscape guy, you know, the guy that just does like the facade. So like the bigger the building, the bigger the team, right? And so because people are gonna sue at some point, or, you know, they have in the past, in case there's like a mistake, you have to make it really clear, like whose job is what. So like whose role and whose responsibility is what. So a lot of people, so the architect, the true role, in my opinion, is coordinating all of these people, and then applying building code and fire and life safety to the building. The design part is just one element that sometimes a different architect will do. So I transitioned my career about 5 years ago to a firm that is really does construction documentation and takes designs that were designed by like other architects and actually makes them constructible, and like does all the detailing for like you know, how to actually install the window, how to actually you know, see that design through. There's a lot more profit there, interestingly enough, and it's a lot, in my opinion, it's a bit more interesting from an engineering kind of project management perspective. Does that kind of make sense? I feel like I just have been talking straight, but
yeah, no.
Yeah.
It's personally, I'm really fascinated because I've, you know, having been on the civil engineering side,
Yeah.
I see it from, or used to see it from the point that you would get handed a drawing, or this is kind of like the general shape and space, now make it work.
Yeah.
So in terms of then going back those steps to go, okay, well, what was the actual creative process, or, you know, that sort of thing, which is what you were sort of talking to. But then it's also interesting just hearing, you know, we generally have an understanding that America is a very, you know, I know it's going to be generalizing, but a much more litigious sort of society. So obviously that then starts driving it and becomes more, you know, in the medical field, it's defensive medicine, whereas engineering, it started to become in Australia too, a little bit defensive engineering. It's, you know, engineering is kind of a little bit easier because you'd have basically a factor of safety. So you do all your calculations and then basically times it by 2 or 3. So it gives you that margin of error in there. So that kind of really helped to cover a lot of things. But it's interesting because
so important. It's so important, the factor of safety. Always.
Yeah. And that's the sort of thing. If in doubt, just add more to it. So,
exactly. And that factor of safety has to be documented perfectly so you can go back later and see it. At least here and stuff. So yeah, architects will do like kind of the same thing in terms of like the factor of safety, at least with like, you know, planning, or like build like at least like a fire and life safety code, like, you know, how to get people in and out of the building. So you kind of like, you round up, you know what I mean? It's like, okay, well, there's like 23.2 people going through this space. Let's just make it 25. You know, there probably won't be ever that many people that go in there, but you know, let's plan for it. So
it's easy enough to just make that wall a little bit thicker, or the opening a bit wider, or whatever it is, and then the client can figure out how they will or won't pay for it.
Exactly.
So yeah, just taking a step back then, because if your initial sort of way that you'd started, how did you go from that to architecture? Like that seems, it's a bit of a jump.
So one of my best friends in college, who is still an architect now, out in New York, he knew he wanted to be an architect from, you know, the beginning. He was like, when he was a little kid, he was like fantasizing and designing his own houses and whatnot. And I would go visit him in studio, and he'd be, you know, building models, and he would show us, and I was so jealous, so deeply jealous. And I am not really a jealous person. You know, my parents made sure that I was always fulfilled, you know, thank you, mom and dad. And, but it was like rage. It was like a very deep feeling. And I liked the environment of the studio space and the way of thinking and the design process. It really spoke to me. And like, school was always not necessarily hard, but I had to try very, very, very hard to do well. And like this just, it seemed like that studio environment would suit me. And it did. And that's why I switched over. I took a semester off. I went back home. I took some art classes and basic architecture classes, and I just made the call and I switched.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, and I mean, obviously, I guess looking back on it now, you can sort of go, that was a really good decision. You sort of feel that?
It's a really hard field, and I don't recommend it lightly to anybody, but yes, because I was able to do something that was really, I just developed a lot of confidence in it. And it was like, finally, I was able to do something that I was really good at, which I think is really, really important, for anybody, is to find something that you're good at and really apply yourself in it and work really hard at it. And so I learned those skills. But right now, it's been 10 years of work, graduate school, undergrad, and I'm ready to kind of maybe reevaluate what that means, and think about the next challenge. So, but I don't regret it at all. Yeah.
It was the right decision at the right time, sort of thing.
Exactly. Yeah, it was the right decision. I was very lost in the engineering school before, I have like the mindset of an engineer, in the sense that just always tinkering with things and understanding how things come together and trying to find better solutions for it. But the school that I went to was incredibly competitive, and it wasn't collaborative, which was there wasn't like the social aspect that comes with it, and like the people aspect, and that was something that I think architecture does really well. You have to understand how people move through space and how they live in their homes, and that was something that I really enjoy about it. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah. So with because there's lots of different. It's kind of funny because you're talking and there's like firing off lots of different questions in my own mind. So I'm trying to circle back around to different things. So how did you find? Because you mentioned that you did some art classes and things like that. Did you before that sort of have a natural sort of drawing sort of thing, or was it?
Yeah, my uncle is an artist. He's he's a painter. He's actually like a trained doctor, and also on the side is a painter. And now he's retired and does it full time and teaches classes. But he got me a watercolor set when I was maybe like 5 or 6, and I remember like people always ask kids like, "What's your favorite class in school? What do you love the most?" And I would always say art. And my mom would be so proud, and my dad would be like, "No, she also loves math." So, surprise, surprise, my dad's an engineer, and my mom is a bit of an artist as well. So, that was kind of how I got into it. So, yeah, I used to always love to draw, and then when I took those community college classes when I came home, I took like figure drawing and just really basic stuff. And I just felt free for the first time in a long time.
Okay. Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. It sounds like with your uncle and that there, it's sort of like there was also that bit of a precedent for doing one thing, but then kind of swapping to another.
Exactly. Yeah. My parents made it like very safe for me to do that. I wouldn't have done that if it wasn't for them, supporting me. So.
Yeah, because I could imagine it's like, hey, I want to change this other thing, which is going to add more years onto what I'm doing.
Exactly.
How do you feel about that?
That's the thing is honestly, I don't know. I have a lot of friends who got into some really serious, over 100, 200K in debt because of it. And I don't necessarily think it's worth it for that, especially not in this country. It's the fantasy of architecture to really do well financially in it. You won't. It's very, very, very difficult to get there. There's a delusion of how to actually build buildings and the idea of the architect. And it's pretty, there's a big disparity there, which is kind of insane, but yeah.
Is that just sort of what we kind of hinted at a little bit earlier in terms of you can have these grand visions and everything, but at the end of the day, you've still got a client who's got to pay for it. And
Yes. There's always a client. It doesn't matter. There's always a client. And you can probably count on one hand people who have the financial independence to design and build their own things. When there's always a client and there's always a budget in mind, it takes away everything that you enjoy. So if you do decide to like go to architecture school or whatever, you know, and people told me this, and there's no way, you know, it's like when people give you advice, there's no way to really like take it until you like experience it yourself or make your own mistakes. But you know, I would say like there's nothing like school, and you'll never repeat that experience again. It's where you learn the design process and where you learn like really get your work ethic down, but you're never gonna do that kind of work ever again, which is kind of sad.
That sort of what I call blank sheet of paper where you can basically do anything. Is that what you're sort of saying? Whereas clients are going to be very constrained, right? We need this. It's got to be functional. By the way, if we can hit this budget.
Yeah, no, it's not even that. The first thing is the budget. The number one thing is the budget. You know, that's it. That's fundamentally it. And you just have to be okay with that. I mean, like it's the thing that is the most restrictive for a reason, you know? Anyway. Ugh. I'm having reactions to it.
And just as an aside, for anyone who is watching, Claire is actually doing the sketch as well.
Oh yeah.
Just she doesn't have an independent camera, so she'll.
Here's my status. Here's my status update. Yeah.
Not bad. Oh wow.
Yeah.
Let's just put it under.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant!
Yay!
Love the way that you've really suggested the trees with just the two tones there.
Thanks. Yeah, it's been a long time. I wish I could like bring up some of my old doodles. Maybe there's some in here somewhere, but I can try to find something halfway decent. I used to paint a lot. I used to like do a lot of gouache, like travel sketches and things like that. Yeah. But I like really like loose drawing, like not with a main line or a scale.
Yeah, no, it's certainly. Since you mentioned the travel sketches and things like that, that's something recently I've really tried to do. So I might just flick up a couple little things as well. I'm sort of here. So certainly when you go on holidays to different places and things, like his.
Oh, I love it.
We went to Toronto. That was a couple of years ago. And this is. I think it was around Easter time, and this was one of the few clear days. And then when we did go up the CN Tower, it was all misty and overcast, which did makes for some good sort of shots and things like that. But you know, half the thing of going all the way up is to see that, and it's just that thing. And you probably find it as well when you do the sketch, and then later on you've got all the memories and things associated with it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And just a quick one of this little church in an island in, I think it was Crete that we went to on another holiday.
That's cool. I love that you fill the entire sheet, like the entire page. It's just edge to edge.
Yeah, it's the sort of thing I hate white. Like it's just in terms of it, then it's really distracting. And then in the same time, when we went to Crete, there was in this cave, you wander all the way down into the stairs, and they used to have like this little church in there. It was just a fantastic space, and it's sort of like the kids came in and went straight back out.
Wait, are there like stalactites and whatever stalagmites there or whatever? Are there like things hanging from the ceiling?
Yeah.
I've absolutely been there, and I just had a flashback to like being 8 or 9 with my parents.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, just from this image. Yeah, I've absolutely been there.
No, it's quite famous on the island. So oh wow, that's small world. So did I even write down on it? I've probably got it on the photos. Or Melidoni Cave is what I've gotten down.
I would not know. I was about 7 or 8. Yeah, and I was definitely like very scared. You know, it was like probably one of the darkest places and wettest places I've ever been. So. Yeah. No,
it was definitely wet and everything, but it was when we went there, it's sort of like I think there was one other group of people, and then they left, and we had the whole place to ourselves. It was amazing. And then something like Euro Disney. Just sat
I
there
love it. I'm so intricate.
And it's the sort of thing that as I had to start from the bottom because they're having one of the parades. So as as the time was going on, you're getting more and more people across the bottom, so I couldn't see it. But yeah, it's those sorts of things. So I mean, seeing that you sort of suggested that, was throw that one up.
No, yeah, I did. What's it called? I went and grabbed something that I did when I think I was in undergrad or something at the time. But I used to love doing these kind of like sketches and then super loose, and then I do like gouache over it. But this is like a church in Berlin that I think I probably, I don't know if I sat there and did it. I think I probably took a photo, but you can tell it's been in the frame for a long time since it's like shifted down and there's like black, I need to like recenter it or whatever. But yeah, I used to do this all the time. And I definitely, it's been a long time. This is nice. This is like reawakening, those muscles.
Yeah. No, that's, I love with that watercolor, just the looseness and the boldness that you've got there.
Yeah.
Because I completely struggle and go the other way. It's sort of like I try it, and you probably see it make things really tight and really rendered. So, because my favorite medium is oil paints, but that's because you can really work something, but then it just takes forever. So.
I did not do well with oil. I have oil somewhere, and it's just like because I'm much better in like acrylic and just like looser stuff, and so I couldn't. Here, let me see how terrible it is.
Mutant, wow, all great drawings from both of you. Thanks for that. Appreciate that.
Aww. I ended up, so I took a painting class like quite recently with friends, like maybe 2 years ago. And I was like, and it's oil. So everyone was like being very like specific and stuff. And I like was like I was like super loose and like just couldn't do the oil. Like I consider all of these not super, but this was like my
oh, cool. That's awesome.
And then like, I've always been like really like loose with it. I remember this was like our first one, like the typical first drawing class that you just like, there's like a wine bottle and just like wrap. This is one I did. My mom passed away like a few years ago. So I did a bunch of these of my mom for my dad, which I have yet to like frame of hers.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. And then these are just like worse and worse. But yeah, I did a ton of this was my oil class where I was supposed to learn how to like get tighter and more like photorealistic, and I couldn't do it.
Couldn't do it. You just wanted to pop out there. Yeah. Because I only really started picking up watercolors in the last couple of years, mainly because once you have kids and things like that, like having a month to work on a painting or something like that yet doesn't happen. So I just found that with watercolor, like you can hammer out something which looks pretty good in a couple hours and be done with it, sort of thing. So it's just sorry.
No, it's okay. I don't mind.
Going back to that. The one thing I never have, like I can handle most mediums and things like that. I like gouache and things like that. I just cannot handle acrylic. It just
really
the paint just dries too quick. By the time I finish color mixing to get what I want, it's dry. I just
that's so funny. I love it. Like I remember, so I was taking it was like figure drawing, like 1. And then I went through the process, doing charcoal, vine charcoal, like blood pastels, you go through, and I loved it. And then they were like, bring in whatever medium you want. And I brought acrylics, and my teacher was like, what are you doing? And I was like, it was like a time day where you had like a 5-minute draw, a 3-minute draw, a 20-minute draw, you know what I mean? With the figure before the pose moved. And, I loved it. I just I liked the limitation of it. You know what I mean? It's like, it's almost like I like we both like rules, it seems like, you like the rules of like being photorealistic, but mine, I like the time constraint and the limits that like the paint gives you. And like, I want to get it done and have a complete project or a complete finished thing in a fixed amount of time. Like, that's what I love that about it. And so I don't know, that's probably a very like atypical artist response to like, I like being forced into something. And I know a lot of creatives like hate that, they don't like the rules that are being applied.
With no, it's like what you say, everyone sort of does their own different thing or what they gravitate towards. Because I did some commercial stuff for a while, like commercial illustration things, and I much prefer, I guess, what I'd call more the fast food nature of things.
Yeah.
So whether it's quick storyboards or quick concepts and things like that, because I just found there was another place I worked when it's sort of like, right, you've got a month to work on a piece, like 8 hours a day, and after the first week, you're like, what am I doing? Like, how can, like, you just keep rendering and polishing, and it's like you've got another 3 weeks to do this. And it's like, what am I meant to be doing? I have no idea. Like, what? Like, it's just...
No, I feel the same way. And then you start hating the project after a while. Do you know what I mean? You don't like what you're like, I'm done, I'm complete. Like, what is the point? And then you get forced to keep working on it, and then it takes away from it. there's definitely a time date for it. But yeah, I love the stuff that you do, like on Greg's stream and stuff, like the little doodles and whatnot that are like, there's so much. They're just a few strokes, and it's like tons of character immediately. Like you can tell, like there's tons of movement and comedy and stuff. So yeah.
Oh, thanks for that. Yeah, no, with those ones, it's just trying to hit that speed thing, because I know sometimes even by the time I've thought of an idea and executed it, like the conversation is sort of already shifted onto the next thing. So coming back to it half the time, it's sort of like, but it's good because it is just that way. And most people, once they seem to get to it, can sort of appreciate it and find it funny. It's always a little bit challenging, because when you get somebody who comes on like for the first time, and that you sort of like, we sort of have a shorthand with one another, so we know how we can rib people. But then if you get somebody in like for the first time, it's always like you got to just pull back a little bit from that. And I think occasionally then afterwards it's sort of like, I'll just drop somebody a line and go, hey, look, I hope it didn't offend you or anything like that.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, exactly. Because like we that's I like how you called it shorthand or crassness, or the fact that we know that we're not like trying to offend any of us. But yes, I agree.
yeah. So cool. Well, if I'm starting to get to the point where you can move on to the next one. I don't know how you...
I'm ready.
Yeah, I'll just throw a quick little bit of blue just to pop that silhouette out a little bit, and then on. So cool. So that was my version of it, and that was yours.
Yeah. Okay.
And then
just this one. Here we go.
Okay, just do a quick little solo.
So cute. It was fun. I didn't do any sky, but that's it.
Yeah, but no, it's just it's great, because with these, it's we've probably gone from much the same source image, so it's always interesting to see how people slightly do it different, or interpret it in their styles and things like that. So, and that was my version of that there. So excellent. Cool. All right, so we'll move on to the next one. I had some really good suggestions. I'll just sort of throw some out and sort of see. We've had Empire State, Disney Castle, Addams Family, Parthenon, the Burj Khalifa, Eiffel Tower, or the Shard. Any of those sort of jump out at you?
Oh, I think they're all going to be very difficult for me. But you pick whatever brings you more inspiration. So.
Okay. Well, I think because we had two people suggest it, and it's quite iconic. Eiffel Tower.
Okay, let's do it.
It's just
remember what that set really like. No, I'm kidding.
Let's see now where if I can just find. Oh, we've also had Tower Bridge and Tower of London.
Okay.
I'll just make a note of that. Tower Bridge, Tower of London. You can tell there's a few English in the chat. There we go. Eiffel Tower. Got that there. Cool. Just pull up some reference here. So with what you've been doing, what's the sort of work or projects that you do? Is it sort of in the commercial space? Is it residential? What's sort of been your practice, I guess?
No, for sure. Yeah, that's a really good question. I've been all over the place, but the majority and most of my expertise is what I would call commercial, which is multifamily housing specifically. So like large apartment buildings and hotels and things like that. So that's really where my expertise lies. But I've done historic renovation stuff, like UNESCO World Heritage Site. I've done retail and like a brewery, like a whole outdoor garden brewery that was really cool. I've done office spaces like for Nike and WeWork, like just really big kind of corporate, like kind of you come in and just like gut an existing building, and they're called like TIs, like tenant improvements, and you just put the offices in there. I've done some educational work like for the UC system here in California, and I think that's it. And then I've done high-end residential, like really custom homes for really, really wealthy people, which is probably my least favorite. But yeah.
And why is that? Is that
the client? I never particularly liked it. The client is actually my least favorite part about the whole process. It seems like a rude thing to say, but the reality is when it's someone's home, they're putting in a ton of money, usually their life savings, something like that, into their home, and it's for themselves and for their home and for their family. So they have a lot of opinions, and they're not usually good ones. And it doesn't matter. You have to deal with it. You don't have a choice.
Yeah. And when you say they're not good ones, is that just because what's the challenge with it?
So when I don't mean like they're not good, like from a design perspective, like I try to eliminate that. Everyone has their different tastes, but it's mostly has to do with they're counterintuitive to what they're asking for. They'll be like, well, I want a lot of light, but then they don't like what the outside of the building looks like to get a lot of light, or and they don't want to have the windows of the building face a certain direction, or do you know what I mean?
So it's kind of like the form which follows the function doesn't kind of match up.
Exactly. And then they'll fight back. And a lot of the there's great clients out there. I just unfortunately haven't had the chance to work with a lot of them. And there's a ton of clients that are also designers themselves that I've worked with. So like a lot of like Apple designers, for example, and not understanding the scale that like designing a MacBook Pro or an iPod or an iPhone is not the same as designing a building. And there's a reason you don't go down to the microcentimeter, which is not a real metric, by the way, but you know what I mean? Like it's not the same scale. And having just such a lack of understanding of that is very frustrating from my perspective. Yeah. So, yeah.
Do you find, do you think yourself, do you sort of think of yourself as an introvert or extroverted sort of person?
I'm definitely extroverted.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I like being around people. That's why like joining the Lego community was so important. It was like the most extroverted thing I could do while being in lockdown.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's just when you were saying before, the people aspect of it, sometimes I'm very introverted. So sometimes the people aspect is like, just wait.
Yeah, you're like, wait a second, I don't like this part. No, it's not that. Yeah, no, I think I'm definitely extroverted. Like I like being around people. I don't necessarily like people telling me what to do. So, architecture is just glorified customer service. And I think a lot of people don't realize that, when they get into it, they think it's like, it attracts a lot of narcissists. It attracts a lot of people who are like, I want to leave my mark on the world, quite literally, but that's like maybe not the best thing. And so I think it makes it a little bit hard for some people to do that, but that's not, I just like buildings, and I like the process, and I like working with really large teams that have a lot of different skill sets and stuff. So that's what drew me to it.
Okay. Then. And I guess then the next sort of obvious, not so much leap, but how do you find, or how did you feel that playing with Lego and things like that as a child then sort of influenced or shaped your views? Or
I think it definitely made me much more aware of like space. Like there's the spatial awareness I think is really, really important. Like I was always tinkering with things. Like when my dad would buy like a new computer or a new TV, though, I would be always the one to put it together, and install it. Like I was better at it than him, and he's like the engineer in the house, which is kind of wild. I definitely messed this up. I just realized I did it completely like the wrong scale. So I'm starting from scratch.
Don't worry about it.
But yeah, so like he would come home, and my dad is an electrical engineer who's like kind of at the end of his career now, but he should have probably gotten into finance and business and marketing, which are like his favorite things. But just like he tried to do with me, he was forced into engineering. And so he's not like a natural engineer. So he like can't put things together. He can't fix things around the house. He's like terrible at that, which is hilarious. But yeah, he's great. It's just not his skill set. And it's something I can do. Like I'm pretty handy. And I think that like playing with Lego and just being conscious of how things kind of interlock and work together made it so that I could really transfer those skills, which is probably what led me to engineering in the first place. Like I always would have done something with a physical entity, like product design. Like I love cosmetics, things like that. I think they're all actually interrelated.
Yeah, because I sometimes think of art as basically problem solving with a pencil.
Yep.
So that's why some people can look at it and sort of like, well, you've got an art degree, an engineering degree. How does that work? Like, so
I know so many people that are like that, by the way. My boss, for example, has an art degree and a physics degree. And my uncle, the doctor and the painter, I mean, architecture in itself is the combination of the two. So if there's an entire industry and field that our entire world is shaped around and formed around, it's definitely relevant. That's my argument to that. So if someone gives you any kind of attitude ever again.
Oh no, it's sort of being introverted and self-referential. It's sort of like this big fact. The big part of it's like I don't care what somebody else thinks. I just find it interesting. Like, no, it's just when you sort of have both those hats, and it just took a long time for me to resolve that in my own head. So like, what's going on here? How does this work? Because it's like you've got obviously left brain, right brain sort of thing, and it's kind of balancing those two.
Yeah.
But
do you think that's actually real though? The whole left brain, right brain thing? Do you think that's just, or I think, don't you think that's like kind of a simplification of how our minds work a little bit?
I think you're always going to get a simplification with it, but I'm left-handed. And it was really interesting when I went to art school, it was like 1 in 2 people were left-handed, whereas in the general community, it's 1 in 9. So I think there is something in that. And when you go from an engineering sort of class where everything is very structured and sequential, and and you go into like an art class, it's most people completely different way of thinking. Like it really is that sort of I don't want it to sound negative. It's that scatterbrain. It's like the idea of sequential steps is completely out the window, and it's sort of like where ideas form and come from. So I do think there is something to that, and there's a dominance there, and it then comes down to those things of what is your natural flow, what do people sort of are able to get into and get lost in really easily. For people,
it's a flow state, exactly, which is like, thank you for whatever TED Talk, coined that term. But yeah. I just trying to remember this. Who
was the original? Was it Angela Duxbury or Duxworth or something? She wrote a book, Grit. It was just going through and analyzing, those people who really succeed and overachieve and sort of things. What are the common factors? And a lot of it was just, talent gets you so far, but it's that perseverance, being able to do things and whatever. And the thing that they found was, because, really interested in a lot of this sort of stuff just for the kids, is people who generally had a lot more success were the ones that did multi-years of a particular, whether it's a sport or a hobby or whatever it was, and weren't really changing. So it's sort of having that ability to come back to the same thing and refine it and practice it and keep on extending it. They generally found those sorts of people were more, successful, quote unquote, however you want to say it.
Right. Like conventionally successful, I guess, whatever. It's like that you could keep up with something, even if, it gets through like the hard, because things get hard, and a lot of people just like give up or they move on to the next thing because they think they're like failing at it. But like, yeah, skills are developed over time and you're not just born with it. Like a lot of people are like, oh, I wish I could draw. It's just like, just take a few drawing classes. They're like hard skills that you can learn, in my opinion. But, I just
I'm sort of much the same with that because some of my family, like I just found my sisters and my mother and things like that, they were just what I would sort of say more naturally gifted and talented. Like they just sit down, they could do it and be able to go through it. Whereas I think I just more just grounded out or grinded it out sort of thing.
Yeah.
And just because of the sheer number of hours and the sheer number of things that you did, then it just got to a point where, it looks like it's more talent, but it's actually, no, it's probably just a lot more hours.
Yeah, it's just like brute practice and discipline at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's where reading through, I think, Mark Cuban's sort of book or his loose notes and things like that, because he was basically like, most people just won't put the effort in. So if you go through and read a magazine, you're going to be ahead of 99% of people in any field because they just won't put the time into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
isn't the strategy to be just a little bit better than everybody else? Just like if you're in a group of 10 people or like in a room of 10, just be the one that's ever so slightly better than the top one, and then you'll succeed. Like rather, than being like 10 times better than the best person, just a little bit better, and then getting there by like just doing good work. I think is like how you succeed in like corporate environments as well.
Yeah, it's turning up, it's doing the work, and just being that little bit in front. And then I think part of it's also the 80-20 sort of principle or rule.
Yeah.
Where, you learn 20% of what there is, and that's going to be able to help you get through like 80% of the situations.
Exactly. My 80-20% or 80-20 rule is 80% or 20% of a company is running, or 20% of the work of the staff of a company is like doing work, and 80% are
just
like
there.
something. Yeah, it's something like that. It's like 20% of the company does 80% of the work.
That probably wouldn't surprise me.
That's definitely something my dad used to say all the time. Because I remember when I started working, I was like, God, there are so many lazy people. And he was like, welcome to the universe, because like you go to school and especially in university and in graduate school, they're like very specifically chosen silos of academia, right? And so typically people who go to those are, of a, I don't want to say caliber, that's the wrong word, but of a mindset to do the work, and there's definitely always slackers and stuff, but you can kind of pick and choose like who you work with. But in a work environment, it's a bit different, There's that,
I always found that sometimes challenging with, when you're doing university and group projects and all those sorts of things where, again, the same sort of thing. You would have 20% of the people, like particularly with the group work and projects and things like that, like, the lecturers and that love it, because if you get a group of 4 or 5 together, it's like, well, you've just reduced your marketing time by 80%. Like,
yeah, there you go. Yeah.
But then it's like, well, dealing within the group, it's you get a few people who are doing a lot of the work and everything and just carrying everybody else.
Yeah, but then you forget that the whole point was learning how to work together and not getting a good grade. And then if you can't do that, if you just carry everybody, then you're failing. That's you're like, wait.
Yeah, no, there is that element, but then sometimes other people are sort of like, well, I'll just wait until somebody else does it, sort of thing.
Yeah, that person just needs to be, they shouldn't even be in school. Get out.
But then, like what you said, then when you get into a work environment, to some degree, you still have that where, you know, some people are lazy and things like that. But if you can get into a really good team of people who just work, then that's always a great spot to be in.
It's the best. Yeah.
So like, well, you've actually got to do stuff to keep up with other people who are really striving and wanting to achieve and do things.
Yeah, and then you're totally motivated by everybody around you and stuff.
Yeah, and then also too, I also find in those sorts of things where you then become much more stimulated and people are bouncing ideas around and really trying to problem solve and, you know, being creative and respecting each other's strengths and all that sort of stuff. So,
I definitely went like kind of buck wild and loose with this one.
It's just,
like, it's like super, super.
Oh, cool.
Out of scale, but I went like totally bananas.
But this it's the usual sort of thing. Like if you don't say that, most people never pick up on it. Like, okay, yeah, you'll get somebody who knows it. But it's like, yeah, it's the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I kept like the iconic thing. It's totally out of scale and proportion, but whatever, it's cool. Yeah.
But then that's sometimes what happens with Lego. Like for them to be able to get things, it's sort of like it can't be the direct scale to make it work.
Yeah, and I definitely respect that, and it doesn't bother me that happens. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why when people do the mini modulars, like I know obviously you've recently on your channel did those.
The laws ones, yeah, they're over
the laws ones.
They're over here. Let me see.
But when people can do that with just really inventive uses of piecage.
Yeah. The micro scale stuff is the coolest in my opinion. I definitely have a really huge respect for that. I think it's so difficult to do.
Yeah, there's one person in our sort of London AFOL's lug, Kaz Market, who does that stuff really, really well. And she currently has some of her stuff in the Lego house in Billund. So it's like, awesome. Yeah, she's really good at it.
Yeah, clearly. Yeah, that's why I actually really like the advent calendars every year. I only get the Harry Potter one, but that like that microscale Millennium Falcons and stuff like that are also really cool. I just have such an appreciation for it. You know, it's so playful. When here, I'm gonna pull up the little micro, because I did the flower shop yesterday. You know, the problem with these laws things is you touch it and it falls apart a little bit, just a little bit. They're actually getting so big now that I can't pick up the whole strip, like the whole row of them. You know, I just can't do it anymore. And like, yeah, this is the back of them, and I'm afraid to turn it around. So I have to, like, yeah, I have to. If I unsnap them, they're just crappily made, but they're so fun. Anyway, I'm not even gonna pick it up anymore.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough.
It's done. It's done. I need to. Do you think it'd be awful if I like set up a space behind me for them?
No, really. Yeah. Why would? No, not at all. I think when you're doing the video or something like that, there's the Lego seems to be one of the few things where kit bashing is kind of not accepted.
I saw your
yeah. Anybody else? So, like for me, I just draw the line at where things are obviously blatant rip-off copies, and you're ripping off the IP and stuff like that. Yep, no, that's. But then when you have the other ones, like, you know, some of the Kobe stuff and what they're doing with some of the military and planes and things like that. And then, yeah, even with what you're showing there, like you can't look at that and go, oh, yeah, that's a knockoff of this particular Lego one or something.
No, there's nothing like that. Yeah.
So, and Rain's come back and said, oh, that's awesome, Claire.
Oh, nice.
Hello to Solar Brick Builder. Welcome along. Great to have you in. And yeah, I mean, I'm good if you are on that one.
Yeah, I'm done. That was my complete loose one. Yeah. Yay.
Hit that Eiffel Tower there.
Cool.
Cool. And then my little Eiffel Tower there.
Love it.
Excellent. Thank you. And the next one I'll let you sort of choose. We've also had the Colosseum come in.
Yeah, I saw that. That could be cool.
So up to you. We've got just quick Empire State, Disney Castle, Adams Family, Parthenon, Burj,
Khalifa. Yeah. Should we go like modern? Actually, you know what? Let's do Colosseum. That sounds really fun.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Where did I? Let me see if I can pull that one. Somebody really need the chat to be like searchable or something.
I know.
Just trying to find.
There's so many different angles to the Colosseum. I'm curious which one you're going to pick.
Part of me wants to go simple. It's like, what will be the easiest angle to execute?
Yeah. I'm going to go grab a quick snack. I will be right back.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. Okay. So BFAB popped in earlier. Thanks. And Funny Figs. Was there a little tongue on that Kermit? I have to make sure we ask about that. Where is the Colosseum? Hello to Sai. Welcome along. No, I'm just gonna have to type it in. I couldn't see it. And then the usual thing is the Colosseum. I can never spell it correctly. Double SE. Have a look. And then, okay. Cool. All right. That's good. Lorraine saying that's awesome. That's great. People saying hello to each other. Oh, Mr. Blue. There we go. I'll put that in there. Yeah, the Colosseum. I'll just take.
Okay. Did you start already?
No. I've just been going back through it. Once I typed out Colosseum, then I found the original person who had the comment. And probably much like me, each time I spell Colosseum, it's different.
I think it's C-O. Oh, no. I think you spelled it right in the chat.
Yeah, I know I did because I went and did a Google on it to make sure I got it right. So, because I know I never do.
I love it. I love that you needed to do that.
That's why when that the actual Lego set came out, I always joked if you couldn't spell it, you shouldn't own it. So
that's true. Yeah, I can't. I have a really hard time spelling medieval.
Have you? I suppose, yeah. If you went to Crete when you were 8 years old, have you been to sort of like Europe?
Yeah, I lived in the UK for about 5 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah, my dad's company took us out there, and so we spent a lot of time traveling around.
Good sort of base to do it from, yeah.
And
roughly, how old were you when that happened?
Like 3 to 8.
Okay, so you're just quite young.
Pretty young. And then my parents, like, we have a lot of family and friends out there, so we would travel a lot back to Europe and stuff. But I haven't been for quite a bit. I guess I was in Greece like 2 years ago for a wedding.
So relatively recently, then. Oh, nice.
Yeah. Okay. Are we doing the Colosseum?
Yep. I just having a look at sort of figuring out.
Oh, which image we're gonna do?
Yeah. It's always funny because I probably consider myself more on the painter side of things. So I always look at the light, the shadow, and stuff like that, as opposed to I guess, more linear and drawing. So, but it's the sort of thing with these. It's you're trying to do the sketches quick, so it's more of the linear. So it's like that would be a great one to do, but not in a quick time frame.
No, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, especially the Colosseum. Like, I'm looking at all these stock images, and they vary pretty dramatically, especially with the light. Otherwise, they're actually pretty similar, unless you're doing the inside versus the outside. And then if you're looking at like the complete wall or the partial.
Yeah. I think for me, it's you've got to do the partial, because otherwise, it just becomes too much. Like, it could potentially be anything if somebody's not looking at it, but I think that partial wall kind of really gives it away.
It does.
Just trying to, it is. It's one of those things. Sometimes if you're just looking at reference, you can be really stumped because you've only got 2 or 3 to choose from. But then this one's gone the other way. It's like there's so many to choose from.
There's so many.
Okay, I think I got one. So might be biting up too much.
Cool.
And Mr. Blue, I saw the Colosseum in Rome. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the Colosseum?
I have, just once. I was with my mother. It was like maybe 10 years ago now. Yeah. We went together, and then she got tired, so we had to leave early, and I didn't get to really explore too much, but we kind of like walked. I need to go back. That's the moral of that story.
Yeah. No, there's a couple of cities which I find that you could just go and spend weeks there and still want to keep on going back and back and back. Other cities, you spend 3 or 4 days a week. You're sort of like, look, I've hit all the big things I want to do. If I never came back here, then that would be okay, sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like Vegas. That's how I feel about it.
yeah, Vegas. No, but there's some which I think where you could always go back to again and again. Definitely Rome, Paris, London, Istanbul. I really like that one.
Me too. Yeah, same.
New York, definitely. And those would be the big ones of places that I've been to, at least. I'm sure there's probably more. I
love Amsterdam. Like the museums there are my favorite.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. But for me, I think it's been about a week there, and it's sort of like, I've seen it. I've seen what I wanted to.
You're ready to move on.
Yeah. Because I particularly liked there. You had the Van Gogh Museum, or Van Gogh or
whatever. Yeah. But the Rijksmuseum was incredible.
I went there when they're refurbishing it.
Yeah, so, that was still good though. That little like kind of crappy version. I mean, what did that take? But that was still a good version of it.
Yeah, it was sort of. It was good and it was bad. I mean, it was good in terms of they still had like all the big pieces and everything that you could see and everything like that. But it just, as one of those museums that you hear so much about, like, it's got all this depth and everything like that, and you go along, and it's like you can only see less than 10% of what they normally have on display. It's like,
but they have so much. Like the Dutch Masters is insane.
Yeah. And I do particularly like Rembrandt. So, and Van Gogh. It's kind of funny because you talk to some people there, and it's like, for you to do it, you got to get your tongue around in this part of your head and things like that. It's like, okay, I know I'm just always going to be butchering it.
You're just never going to say it right. That's okay.
Yeah. One place I did find completely overrated was Venice. I don't know if you've been there, but
it's like Vegas.
Yeah.
I didn't like that. I think like I'm trying to think. It's like, I've been to like the last few years I've been traveling to Asia a lot, and I love Bangkok. I love Thailand. I love the beach towns and stuff, but Koh Phi Phi is like the Las Vegas. It's like the party town and stuff like that. Like I don't need to ever go back there.
Yeah.
No. I really liked how am I forgetting this? Like Prague and Dubrovnik. I think you can get pretty lost in those cities.
Yeah, Prague was an interesting one because I had a really good friend, particularly in university, and they completely raved about it. And I think it becomes one of those things that they build it up so much that when you then actually go there, it's like actually it could never live up to that.
Yeah, that sucks.
So I think that was part of that. Like, don't get me wrong, the architecture was phenomenal, and particularly like when you grow up in Australia and things like that, because the country is really young and being honest, the architecture of a Western style only exists for the last 150 years, more or less. So you don't have any of that real history and connection and things like that. So you go along to somewhere like Prague, and because you'd always seen like the Disney castle and all those sorts of fantastical type castles, it's like, oh, okay, I just think that they're making it up. And then you go along to somewhere like Prague, and it's like, oh no, it's actually based on real places. Like,
it's Disneyland. It's like real Disneyland. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And like, you know, I didn't go there until I was in my mid-20s, like the first time I went there. And so it was such a head spin. So like, I've just always thought that those things like the Disney castle and stuff like that was just purely imaginative architecture. And it's like, oh no, it's actually grounded. So,
yeah, exactly. There's like real castles that it's based off of.
And you sort of feel like a little bit of an idiot. Of course, you know, nobody makes this stuff up.
No, I mean, yeah, there is stuff that's made up, but it's not. It's usually like about space. And even then, you could probably see hints of actual architectural styles, because people, you know, something they teach you in at least for me in design school, it was like, everything's already been invented and created already. And, you know, you're not gonna reinvent the wheel, and you're not gonna reinvent architecture and the style or anything like that. What you need to do is like take the elements that exist now and make it work for your client and for the restrictions that you have.
Yeah, put your spin or flavor or take on it.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's no way to like get rid of that, the environmental influence.
Well, that was because I did conceptual design and things like that, like for movies and storyboards and things like that. And that was the thing which you always found that is whenever you come up with something which is completely, or the designs which generally fell apart or didn't get responses or things from art directors and what have you, were generally the ones that had no grounding in reality, because it was that sort of thing where people need an entry point.
Yes, like their brain point.
Yeah, it's what you know, it's familiarity, it's all that sort of stuff. So if you don't have that, 99 times out of 100, it's just going to fall apart. It's not going to work.
Yeah, especially with like I think with illustration, especially, you know what I mean. People, there's something familiar that people need to have with it.
Even when you're doing completely alien technology and things like that, there still needs to be a bit of that grounding there.
I don't want to say like anthropomorphized or whatever, you know, it's like there's like a human element that needs to exist for people to like, or a scale at least for people to wrap their mind around. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
It's certainly whenever you're doing any of the concept sort of things, like you can have anything, like even like this, like if we just did it devoid of people, it doesn't, unless you know instinctively that's the Colosseum and you know the height. But as soon as you even put like in a suggestion of a figure, all of a sudden it's going to ground it. It's going to put the scale and it's going to,
Also, so, I just flipped over. So I have just one screen. And so I have the image of my stock image. And then I have what you and I, we're doing the same exact image. I'm just like.
Okay, then it's like, sensibilities might be similar.
Like clearly we're like literally the exact same one. I'm not making it up.
Yeah, because I just sort of looked at it, it's like, oh, you know, having the sun peering through the trees or something just off to the side. And I don't even think it's,
It's also the most intriguing photo out of all of them. It's like, it's framed well. There's something different, that it's off center in just the right way, you know?
Yeah, no, exactly. That's sort of why I sort of looked at it a little bit, because just knowing illustration, cheating things, as soon as you do something which is dead symmetrical, you're like, it's really hard, because as soon as something gets out of whack, whereas if you've got it off center, it's like, well, there is no symmetry around it. So it's kind of one of those lazy cheats to.
Yeah, absolutely.
And everybody thought we were being clever.
We just saw it as like an opportunity.
Yeah, it's like, but then that's particularly when doing different illustration and things over the years, if you got really tight deadlines and things like that. So it's like, how can I not so much cheat it, but bang for buck? It's that fast food illustration type stuff again.
You have to do that though. I mean, like, you can't go over the top all the time.
Well, particularly for some things, it's like if it is conceptual design and things like that, like you might do 10 different things of which they're going to choose one, because that's, or they'll do a mashup. It's like, I like part of this, part of that, but so to go through and just spend a lot of time on one because you've challenged yourself, or you've just made your life more difficult than what it needs to be.
Yeah.
So sometimes when you're doing cars and things like that, I just do simple 1-point perspective.
That makes sense.
Because you do a side profile of a car, and you just twist the wheels a little bit, and you just force it just slightly, and it looks really good, and it's really effective. And it's like, oh, it looks like you must have spent a lot of time on that. But it's like, no, I just did a side profile and tweaked a few things. But
you pick the key elements that define it, and then you picked one, like the one direction to view it from. It makes sense. But it's also like, it's a survival too. You know what I mean? Like, you have to. I think I remember, like, I used to always, like, with work environments and stuff, I used to always push myself so hard, and I was like, if I work the hardest, I'm going to be the best. And that's true to a degree, but you have to, like, work a bit smarter too, and like figure out how to, like, use your time in the best way possible so that you can go home and see your family and your friends and not be drained by the whole process.
Yeah. And particularly with, like, even with client work and things like that, you still want to, do a really good job and everything like that. But at the end of the day, I always saw a lot of the conceptual design stuff is you're communicating information, you're communicating the feel. So whether or not, you do something that's brilliantly, wonderfully technical, it's sort of like, well, at this stage, you need enough information to get the idea across. And if it is successful, then when you go to the second stage, you're worried a little bit more about, the nuts and bolts of how this thing is actually going to work or move, or, it'll change whatever need. Or,
it has to change. That's the whole point. And that's the design process, right? And it's like, you can't take it personally, and it's successful if it does, move along.
You've seen or know of the original Blade Runner?
Yes, and I love the photography. You know how there's so many people that, like, still do that same style of photography?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, why? Where are you going with this? I'm curious.
You basically, the designer on it was Sid Mead, a guy called Sid Mead, who also did the original designs for Tron. He did the original designs for Alien, but not the Xenomorph. That was done by somebody else. And he went to the same school as a guy called Ralph McQuarrie, who was the guy who did all the original conceptual designs for Star Wars, because they both went to Art Center in Pasadena. Okay. But anyhow, long story short, he at least from conceptual design, like for illustration and things like that, like, he is the god. The stuff that he did was just phenomenal. Because originally in the 60s, he was a car designer for GM.
Makes sense, actually. It does make sense. You can see that it's with his work.
Yeah, it was always, for him, it was always, what's the function and what's the, later on, the narrative? What's the scenario you're trying to create within that? Which then makes all the work a lot more believable.
Yeah.
But he worked mainly in gouache, just because, he came out of that late 50s, early 60s generation.
Yeah.
And his stuff, like, it was just phenomenal. and everybody sort of always referenced it and still do to this day. And anyhow, the short version of where it's going with that is he actually came out to Australia in, I think it was the mid-2000s, and he did a talk out there, which was just kind of amazing because it's sort of like you got this guy who's so well known, and anyone who does anything in film, from illustration, that's totally like he is the god sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And it was just interesting the way that he talked about clients and your art and how it fits into the design process and things like that. And mm-hmm. the main thing I picked up out of that was it's sort of like you will have your art side of things, and whether or not it's good or bad exists independently from the commercial reality of what is there. Like it can be great and everything like that, but then if a project doesn't get funding or doesn't get financing or it stops dead,
then what's the point?
It's you can't take it personally because it's like factors which are completely outside of your control, and it's got nothing to do with the quality of your work. Mm-hmm. They're just larger business decisions.
That's good. We aren't taught that at all. It's like if you can't be successful and like get your work built, like or at least that's like how I kind of viewed it. Then like, what's the point at all? It's like the design just sits. You know what I mean? It doesn't get viewed. It doesn't get experienced. It doesn't do anything.
Yeah, I think there is an element of that, but it's also too a matter of at least in the, I guess the illustration creative aspects of that too, mm-hmm. is that, whether a film gets funding or goes ahead or those sorts of things, mm-hmm. largely it's independent of any of the conceptual design and sort of stuff like that. Because it's, did this actor get attached to it, or did this director like it, or
which has nothing to do with any of the art that's gone into it, like quite literally nothing. Yeah.
But a lot of the times, it's got independent of that. But it's like a lot of the conceptual stuff is initially what the film is sold off. Combination of script and whatever. It's sort of like, we've got the script. Here's a few pieces of what this might be like, and maybe we get this actor or this director attached to it.
Right, and that's what's going to sell it. That's how we'll get funding. Blah blah blah.
Blah 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 blah.
Yeah, so, it's not like art for art's sake at that point. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like architecture that doesn't get built kind of turns into that. It's like the design itself, the precedent itself. Like all the famous architects, they had however many projects that never actually got built, and they're still relevant, and you can still learn from them. But there's something so sad about it, and maybe because it's the built environment and it's something that you experience. Maybe that's, where my perspective comes from. And at the end of the day, like you are selling, the design is the awareness of the budget and the constraints at the same time of being good design, right? So it's not like they aren't like yours, like what you're describing is mutually exclusive. Rather the other way, like what I am is it's. I can see where you're. Yeah, if this is the budget and your design constraints and that, then you weren't able to deliver on that as such. Yeah, if you can't fulfill that, then it's not a good design. It just because it looks like a cool picture and a cool doodle on whatever on a piece of paper doesn't make it as successful. There's still value to it because of what it is, but it's just not the same.
Okay. It's an interesting way of.
Do you know what I mean? It's almost like a design failure at that point.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's if you can't fulfill the brief or the want or the need for what this thing needs to be, because most of the times people don't just go, I'm going to build this for the sake of it. Like there's actually a reason or a civic need or whatever.
Yeah. Very few times are things built just for fun, and those are, and when they've done that, those are very like intentional follies. You know what I mean? Like they're playful but intentionally so. Like they don't follow the rules of architecture, but because that's the rule itself.
Yeah. Okay. It's interesting to. Never really sort of thought about it in that way in terms of architecture.
Oh, like if it's not built, like it's like if a tree fell and nobody heard it, did it actually fall or whatever?
Yeah, a little bit like that, but in terms of you can have, I guess that's what I was sort of saying. Whether or not something happens in the design or conceptual design sort of thing for film movies, that can be independent of the client realities, if that makes sense. Yes. Whereas what you're saying is no, in architecture, it's directly tied to it.
Yeah, in my opinion, the thing is there's different schools of thought, right? That's probably, it's also just, I'm subconsciously or very consciously justifying my reasons of leaving design heavy firms and going into construction based work, because it is dry, but it's also a very different skill set is to know how to get something built versus how to make something pretty. And making something pretty what always came kind of natural to me, while getting something built was a lot harder. And so it was a bigger challenge, but that's not the case for everybody, obviously.
No, exactly. Because we're, and we might fall into the category of clients to hate.
Yes.
We're looking at basically knocking down our house and designing it from scratch, sort of thing.
Awesome. No, you're not going to be you're not going to be client to hate. Do you also you respect what an architect does, and you respect that they have a skill set that you might not have. I think that's also very key. It's like, it's not just the architect, but anybody, like any skilled worker, right? It's like you're hiring them because you need them, or are you hiring them because you need a stamp? I think that's the difference.
It's very much we're hiring them because we need them as such. It's because this is what's going to be called, at least in the UK, it's called a self-build, which we've never done anything on this scale before. We've got a few properties and done like complete guts and refurbishments, or just trying to think what the American rehab, I think you guys might call it.
Like you go into a space and you like take it down to the studs and just gut it completely, but you don't like, do you change the footprint of the space, or like what do you like?
No, usually we've never changed the footprint of the space. The most sort of technical, I guess, we've ever gotten has been to, take down walls and put in new structural members and things like that. So it's just not a matter of getting. Changing load-bearing walls and things like that.
Yeah.
So doing that and gutting it, and then over here, I think in the States you call it a furnace, which does your heating, whereas here it's called like a boiler. So there's been a couple of places.
We call them, it's a boiler. I think a lot of, you've probably heard a lot of like the colloquial, like people call them furnaces here, but they're boilers. They're technically boilers. Yeah.
The boilers. Yeah. No, I've occasionally watched some of the American renovation shows just because.
Don't watch those. Those are like, those are the worst. I hate those the most. They're just like, they give you good inspiration and stuff, but they're not usually like, that's like the people that they're actors, not architects. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's like reality shows, which aren't reality sort of thing.
Yeah, and then they dumb down like a lot of the process, and a lot of the terminology that they use is incorrect, unfortunately. But yeah, not to be an elitist about it, but yes.
Yes.
Here you go. So mine is super colorful this time.
Oh wow! Let's put it up on me.
Yeah, I should probably. I don't know if it's like very. I feel like I'm going more and more cartoony with each one of these.
Oh no! That's excellent. No, that's awesome. I love that. And it's kind of like what you say, the fact that we sort of chose both the same sort of orientation with things. That one there. So I'm going to pick up the pace a little bit here.
No, take your time. Take your time.
I started noodling the windows and the arches and things too much.
No, I like literally took like the thick side of a Copic pen and I was like, that's the window. There we go. Done.
Yeah. When we're talking about shortcuts and cheats.
Yeah, I'm very like I love taking like really bold gestures and stuff, but I'm gonna finesse this. Could you imagine if I just like busted out the Coliseum Lego set right now and I was like, I'm gonna build this in the same time you finish drawing that.
All right, so I've got about 16 hours to draw this.
Exactly. There you go.
The rest sort of thing. So,
did you get that?
Sorry?
Did you get the Colosseum?
No.
Okay.
It's kind of funny because when it was first mentioned, like, because there was the initial,
like the hype and the news and stuff.
No, even before that, like it was sort of, I think about a year out, there was murmurings that there was going to be this Colosseum set, and initially it's like, oh yeah, wow, that'll be a really, really cool one because it's a great building and things. And then I started to think about it. It's like most of it's circular, most of it's arches. There's going to be a huge amount of repetition with it. So look, as a set, like I can sort of appreciate it for what it is. But certainly when you look at the instructions and it's like, right, you do this now, do it 200 times.
Yeah.
Maybe not, sort of thing. And then the other thing too is then the expense of it. It's sort of like it is not
price. Yeah, it's a bit debilitating. Yeah, it's for that. What is it? 500 or what is it again?
Here it's £450. So I think you guys, by the time you do this, like if you did the straight exchange rate, it should be about 600 American, but I think it's about 550 maybe or something. But yeah, it is.
Let's see.
So when you have something of that expense, it's like, would I prefer to have that as the number one for that sort of expense, or are there other sets in front of it? And I'd probably say there's other things in front of it.
I know, same. I would rather get, like, for that price point, I'd rather get like the Millennium Falcon and the piano and stuff like that. Okay, it is $550 here. Yep.
Yeah. So, and then you're at that sort of price point, and it's like, that is actually really hard to justify that sort of spend.
Yeah.
Like it's that next level up, and particularly like, I mean, we're still in, because we're doing our, we want to do our house and things like that. It's very much saving mode.
Yes. And so to spend on something like that is that you're not even like 100% convinced that you want. Yeah, that's a big deal.
Between that and if something like that came into the house, I'd probably get killed anyhow. So it's
okay, well then there you go. So there's additional motivation for you there.
So yeah, because what we're looking at doing is, because the block that I'm just trying to think it's the better part of an acre. Which I don't know if you guys use that.
Yeah, we do.
Okay, so that and typically when we got the place originally, it was one of the classic things of best street, worst house. So
yeah, that's location, right? It's like, have you heard that before with like real estate? Yeah, it's like ideal. That's the most important thing. As long as the location is good. Yeah,
and so most of this area has been, the last 10, 15 years completely developed. So you're taking down all these little tiny cottages and they're converting them into, 5, 6, 7,000 square feet houses.
Wow.
So that's what we're also looking at doing. And then it's because of where it is and because of where the in-laws are and everything like this, like we are going to live here until basically we can't, sort of things.
Yeah. Would this be like you would... so this is like kind of your next big home kind of for yourselves, right? Like it's not for sale. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not for sale. I mean, you never say never on anything, but it's not in the plan, sort of thing. It's sort of like,
right.
That's what I mean. We'd stay here until you basically you got your tongue hanging out and you need to move into a retirement home, sort of thing.
No, that's great. No, and I think I'll be right back. But I think that also makes for a better investment if you do it for yourself. At least I think people have always said that,
Yeah. Right there. Let's get some of that. Let's take the shape out a little bit. Hello to Just Build It. And I saw Molly Min pop in earlier. And Bart saying he loves the Colosseum. Brilliant. That's excellent to hear. So yeah, that's what we're looking at doing, and we're just at the initial sort of thing where because we've lived in this place now for what's it going on 8 years,
Mm-hmm.
we know the area really well. We know our block. We know pretty much, where the sun goes at the time of day,
Mm-hmm.
how we live in it with the kids, where we, think it's going to go in the future.
That's incredible.
So all that sort of stuff. So we've had a long time to think about it. And start to do up our own little, Gumby floor plans and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then even just doing, because obviously you can draw in perspective and things like that. Just a quick sort of, this is kind of the outside, because it's kind of like the front of it. We want it to be very much sort of like English, that sort of what they call the arts and craft, or that sort of Victorian sort of style.
Mm-hmm.
But then out the back, because of the way the sun is, it's like we want it to have, the
Lots
more
of
contemporary,
glass. Yeah.
lots of glass, and then where you open up, so you've got like the kitchen and dining areas, and they sort of open up and then become like indoor, outdoor sort of living spaces.
That's fantastic. That's exactly, I would love to have that as well. That sounds amazing. I mean, like, wait, where are you guys going to go when all this construction is happening?
Well, we'll probably just have to rent a place somewhere nearby. Yeah. We were considering one of our own. We have some family rental homes ourselves. Right. But they probably wouldn't. There's no way they'd be big enough, because we normally with those go for the average part of the market, just in terms of what works well for rental doesn't necessarily always work well for large family houses, sort of thing. Yeah. So yeah, because the builds we sort of think will probably take 12 to 15 months, things going well.
I was going to say, so you want to be comfortable while you guys are doing that.
Yeah. And then the planning process is interesting, because you've got to, as anywhere else, you've got to go through like a normal sort of council, local government type process.
Mm-hmm.
Which even at the moment with COVID and everything like that, like it's just taking that much longer.
Mm-hmm.
And then just where we are, there's also a residents association as well.
Oh,
so
you have to get them to approve it, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, they've got to give their blessing and things. But it's the sort of thing where, because so much development's happened in the last 10, 15 years, as long as you're not doing anything too stupid, they're not really going to say much about it. It's just making sure, it fits in with what they want to be doing.
Right, that you're not completely coming from left field.
It's more about what they don't want is, the blocks are reasonably of good sizes, and they don't want the whole place just turning into like terraces, more or less.
Yeah.
So, where people build boundary to boundary, it's like, no, you've got to come in at least a couple meters on each side. Yeah, those sorts of things. I mean, they say, keeping the character of the area, but you've got everything from, mock Tudor types houses through to, Victorian to Georgian. You've even got a couple of eco houses, which are, basically square boxes painted blue. Like,
oh my God. Okay. So it is all over the place.
Yeah. It's in terms of keeping with the character of the area, it's like, the character is kind of anything at this stage. So, but it is, so, we've got all those sorts of things which are in play. And now we're just, because we had the plans, we've been interviewing a couple of architects and things like that. And it's just trying to really figure out how to go, because by the time you just do all the planning, like, it's here in the UK, you've got basically two stages. You'll have the first sort of planning, which is, this is kind of what we want in terms of a general shape of the house, how big it is, roof lines, those sorts of things. You get the permission for that. And then after that, you then go on to the actual drawings that you'll do to build from, more or less. So, and then there's a whole bunch of other things.
No, that's the same thing here too.
Yeah. So just making sure, because it wasn't never quite sure. Somewhere's different. And then, there's just all the different surveys which need to go along with that. So just the paperwork exercise. By the time you've done enough plans that you can build stuff and had all the consultants and the architects and things like that, you're looking £40,000 to £50,000.
Yep. It's expensive, isn't it? And the architect's probably not, it's not actually making that much on it. It's like not actually as prolific as you think it should be.
Yeah, because it's just all the
for
different
the amount of hours of work and stuff to do it as well. It's it's crazy. It's very, very expensive to like build your own home. It's definitely something of opportunity. Do you know what I mean? It's like, but it's, you know, if you can do it, that would be incredible. I would love to do the same thing one day. You know what I mean? Like, even though I could probably like do the design myself, like I'm probably not going to save that much money, because at the end of the day, construction costs and raw material costs right now, by the way, that's raw material costs right now are through the roof globally. So just, it might affect your timeline pretty dramatically. So I would like, I'm not sure what the case is in England, but like wood here is completely out of control, delayed because of COVID.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been, because we have some of the rental houses, and we deal, I'm part of landlord networks and things like that. I know the guys who've been refurbishing and things like that. It's been an absolute nightmare, because I'm part of a WhatsApp group, and it'll be sort of like, right, you know, I'm looking for, we call it plasterboard. I'm trying to think what you guys call it. Drywall. Yeah. Looking for that. You know, has anybody seen any? It's so like, oh yeah, we saw, you know, some over in this store, and it's sort of like, that's 50 miles away, but it's like the only place which has it. And they're at the stage now where you can't ring up the store and go, look, I'm coming over, can you reserve it?
No, they won't even do that, because it doesn't.
Yeah, it's basically within the next hour they'll have 20 people in there asking for it. Like, so
and then they can literally pick and choose whatever price they want to sell it at, because everybody needs it. So that's definitely happening everywhere, and like especially on like a bigger scale as well.
Yeah, so that's, I mean, that was, you know, we've sort of been kicking around this thing for quite some time, and it's only in the last little bit we started to look at it and go, right, given where the kids are at school, given this, given that, if we don't start doing this soon, it's actually going to get really, you know, we're going to be doing it when the kids are at important stages in school and things like that, and, you know, that's really not ideal. And then it's also, you know, the house, it's kind of fine at the moment, but because we've had this in the back of our mind, it's not like we've been putting a lot of money in, you know, really maintaining it to a high level, because
you knew you were going to change it. Exactly.
You have to take it down. So, but then it's like, well, that's starting to show through, and it's sort of like there's some issues, and it's like, well, if we don't do this soon, we actually need to start spending some money on this up.
Well, that's exciting. I know it's like super stressful, I'm sure, but it's still really exciting that that's like in the future.
Yeah, it's because, I mean, how, from your side of the fence, what would you say would be tips on selecting an architect? Because we sort of look at it, and it's partially, it's like, it's really hard because it's going to set, I guess, the tone of where everything goes.
I would. Well, that's really hard. It's going to be a relationship that you're going to work with intimately for a long time. So it's kind of like picking a doctor. It's like you want to trust them. You know, you want to trust them for their skill set, obviously, because it's like, you know, very important that you want them to be competent and stuff like that. But also, like, personally, you want to be able to get along with them, since you're going to be spending time with them significantly. I would try, like, when you've been interviewing architects, do they show like their precedent work and things like that? Do they talk about the challenges? I think it would be really important, like when you are interviewing them, to ask them about like COVID and like the state of affairs and like what are delay times and things like that. If they have like an idea of that and an awareness of that, I think that would be very, very important and very telling of you know, of that. And then I would also like ask about, they need to be very familiar with like at least I'm sure it's the same thing in the UK, but in the US, if you don't go through the same permitting, you know, hoops, and if you don't get it properly approved, it can lead to a lot of problems for you later, especially like if, you know, you didn't get the proper permit, and then the contractor like kind of fell through and didn't do a good job in the construction, and you want to kind of come back and be like, hey, you need to come back and fix this. You're going to be kind of, your hands will be tied for different reasons. And then if you do ever want to sell it, which you should always, you know, as you know, you should, even if you have no intention of selling it, you want to be able to sell it. also, you want to kind of have everything by the book. If you're spending that kind of money, I think it should be by the book. That's kind of my opinion on that stuff. So if they have an awareness and a knowledge of permitting, and like if they can stamp it and do it themselves, I don't know what that process would be, but that's how I would approach it. Someone who's like aware of the market, aware of how the supply chain works during a time like this, seeing how it's going to impact construction times and delays. And then because like here in the US, there's the architect and then there's the general contractor, and they're completely independent entities. And how is it in the UK? Is it like, is your builder the architect, or is the builder separate?
No, the builder's separate. So, and this is then the sort of, you can have, the architect and the builder separate, but then also too, you can have, and this is where we've also interviewed one person, and you can have,
like a design building, like it's like a shop kind of stuff, or
it's more what's called a planning consultant. So they're not a full-on architect, but they generally, because they work more with developers, they're more attuned to, I guess, what's more economical to build, what's, those, it's more, I think, what's the best way to, more being pragmatic in terms of being able to deliver a final result. Like sometimes you get the architects where, and we've got a sense of this with one of them, it's sort of like this, they're pushing for a certain kind of design because it's going to look great in their portfolio. And it's like, no, that's not what we're.
I would steer clear of those, especially since you have an artistic eye, you have a design intent for it, you already have a vision for it. You can almost drive that yourself. Like the design, and then someone like what you just described, that sounds like it would be a really good fit.
Yeah, so it's, and the way which, what happens here is when you submit designs and everything like that, it goes to the council and it's open to the public. So basically what we did is I went through all the recent designs in the area, because of that thing, you've got the Residents Association, which sits on top of it, so you've got to be mindful of that. And from the drawings, basically picked out guys who basically been able to successfully get plans done and things within. And so they've done a whole bunch of work in the area. And then, like, we went around the other day just having a bit of a drive and going and visiting because we got a list of all the houses that they've worked on. So then going and seeing and looking at each of the houses just to get a bit of a flavor. Okay, it might not be exactly what we're interested in, but in terms of a little bit like what you were saying before, getting a bit of a history of what they've been doing and sort of understanding that as well. But it just feels like one of those things, because it's the first time you've ever done it. It's going to be a lot of money. It's going to set the tone for it and everything like that. And it's like, how do you make these decisions? It's sort of like,
it's a bit of a crapshoot as well. You know what I mean? That's like why it's like, and then what would be, it's because you're doing it like one fell swoop. You're not just like going in and like phasing it and doing like parts of the house. You know what I mean? I think that's what's so fearful about it, is that like you're leaving your house and you're coming into it, or you're leaving your house for it to essentially be demolished entirely. Yeah, I think it's
Yeah, it's just
stressful.
Yeah,
that's why I don't actually like high-end residential, because it is a high-risk game for the client. So maybe I don't like the responsibility. Do you know what I mean? And like what you said, like there are architects out there who just like care about like how it's a narcissistic, like they're making a home for you and they care more about how it's going to make them look than you. And that's not, they forget that it's client work. They forget that,
Yeah, and that's a sort of, because certainly when we've done other renovations and things like that, when you need to deal with, getting structural elements done and things like that, sometimes, you need that sort of planning sort of person who's more in tune with what the council is and how they work and things like that, rather than the architect who's sort of like, well, we don't actually need you to design anything other than, this sort of. So it's like what you say. It's a bit of a crapshoot with it. Or it feels that way, and it's like most things. Once you go through something the first time, then you figure out what a lot of the pitfalls are. But it's also the sort of thing, I don't want to be doing this a second time, to be honest.
No, you don't. Why would you? That seems like you're throwing money down the toilet at that point.
So cool. All right, well, I think on the Colosseum one, I'm kind of finished with my bit, and I know that you've done yours before.
So
I
love it. Yours looks so good.
Just could have got a bit distracted with it. So cool. No, I appreciate that. Let's see now. What else do we have? Then you had Space Odyssey. What do you both love about the Colosseum, and anything you dislike?
Good question.
I'll let you go with that one first.
Well, like, are you talking about the Lego set or the actual one? I would say for the actual one, I mean, I like the history is more interesting, like what it stands for and like how grandiose it is for like the time that it was built. It's really impressive if you really, really stop to think about it. I don't really, there's nothing to dislike about it. I probably dislike when I was there. I remember like tourist wise, it was a little dirty. There's a couple, it wasn't like kept as nicely as I thought it should have been, but I've heard that that's gotten a bit better. So yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think coming from the structural engineering sort of side of things, and this was the thing that always amazed me, is that you had these buildings like this, and then just off to there at the other side, I think you had the Forum, and you had a couple of these ancient ruins, and they had these massive domes, or arches, sorry.
Yeah.
And even the further around in Rome, you've got, I always get the name of it mixed up. Is it the Pantheon?
Rome is the Parthenon.
Parthenon. Pantheon's the one in France. Yeah, no.
No, in Athens. Wait, there's Athens and then there's Rome.
And then there's a third one, which is more the church with the big massive dome, which is in France, in Paris.
That's the one in Montmartre. It's like, or is it Notre Dame? Like that would
no. It's I'll have to dig it out because I can. Yeah, I always get it.
There is one in France. You're right. There is there is a Panthéon. I remember now. Okay, let me see. I think you're right.
Yeah, Pantheon.
In France. Yeah, that's the big church, the Panthéon, and then there's Parthenon. That's Greece, and then there's the Pantheon in Rome, and that's and that's like that's also iconic and.
Yeah, because that's the one with the other big dome. But anyhow, sorry, where I was going with that is that you had, in the ancient times, they basically had figured out cement and concrete.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until like the 1840s, because it became lost knowledge. And then in the 1840s, you had the cement, which was then reinvented basically. And it's sort of like, it took 2,000 years. So in terms of just having that and just the amazement of the structure that they were able to achieve like 2,000-3,000 years ago, it's pretty phenomenal.
Well, there's certain things that we still haven't figured out how they did.
Yeah.
Like like a type of fire or something that they used to do that we have no idea how they did it.
No, they did it. And then you've always got the classic pyramids. How did they build them, sort of thing.
Aliens.
So, in terms of dislike, I think it was a bit like when we were there. It was somewhat the tourist aspect, that you're walking around it, and look, I get it in terms of you got the locals there and they're dressed up as gladiators, but they're quite grabby and they're trying to grab you. So then they take a photo and then you pay them money, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Which that sort of took away from it a little bit. But yeah, it's. I think the worst place we've ever been to that has been the pyramids.
In Egypt?
In Egypt, yeah. You just couldn't, like, as soon as you get there, you are just hassled nonstop.
Yeah, it's like a way.
And it's like, you just get to the point, it's like, right, I just want to get into the pyramid, see what I need, and then get back out, because it was just like, you can't walk around and just, because you're just constantly being grabbed and everything. Okay, yeah, we should probably move on to the next one.
Oh yeah, that's true. We've done 3. How many do you usually do over like the course of?
It's the sort of thing, when it's architecture, I always find, or buildings and things, you get slowed down a lot, because with characters and things like that, you can sort of do it. But that's sort of why sometimes my streams can go for quite some time, because I want to get a number done. But whenever I got somebody else on, like today, it's sort of like I try to limit to 3 hours or whatever is comfortable, sort of thing. So
No, that's fair. Yeah.
yeah, and don't think you're going to be there for another 6-7 hours. No. At which stage it's like, yes, I fell asleep. No.
I mean, like, sure, we can hang out. I'll go take a nap. You keep going. Like,
sure. So I guess the next one. Is there anything which from what we had before that was sort of jumping out at you?
You've already done the Disney Castle like in your travel one, so I feel like not picking that one. Sorry to whoever suggested it.
Also, Sydney Opera House has been suggested too.
Sydney Opera House could be cool. I've tried drawing that so many times and messed it up because it's like if you don't get the right angle, you know what I mean? And then But we also got the Addams Family House. Do we want to do that one?
Yeah, if you want to do that one.
Yeah, let's do something a bit more playful. I like that.
Okay, yeah, let's see when. I think that went all the way back, so I have to put that back in the chat.
Yeah, Kevin suggested it.
Yeah. No, just quickly. Let's see if we get the same reference again as well.
I know, I'm curious. This is cool. I want to do the gate almost like calls to me, you know, with like they had like their name in it.
Okay. Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose this is the thing. You've got the original. What is it? Is it 1960s TV show? And then they did the 90s films.
I loved those when I was a kid. With Christina Ricci.
Yeah, and Christopher Lloyd.
Mm-hmm.
It was the Back to the Future scientist guy.
Yep. Yeah. No. Yeah. No. I think he's great. My mom loved him. I loved him. He's great. And then Joan Cusack is in it too. Remember, she's like the evil one.
Yeah, and then you had the main guy was.
I can't remember.
Julia. It was. Yeah. Anyhow. All right. I think I know.
Yeah, I just picked mine.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's see.
Where we go. I think I'm probably going to be. I think I've probably been misguided by you, or not misguided, but you sort of put the suggestion in there. It's like, actually, yeah, that's kind of interesting.
Oh, the gate.
The gate, yeah.
I'm not doing it, but the gate is cool, isn't it?
Yeah. There's a gate, and there's a cool little stylized one there.
Yeah.
So, just out of interest, when you were doing your architecture qualification, were they still making you like make sort of models out of balsa wood, or?
Yes, for my school, yes. I don't even know if they do that anymore though, but yeah. That was my favorite thing, was model making, which I probably should have just gone into a model making shop and done that, which is probably why I love Lego so much.
That was going to be the sort of thing. Is there like a connecting the dots sort of thing there?
There's probably a very theorized one about space and working with my hands, blah 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 blah. But I just like making models.
Yeah. Was that the? Sorry, just trying to see if we got the. Yep, no, that's all right. Because the thing, I like using. You've got Copic markers and then Prismacolor, which I've always preferred the Prismacolor markers. But I think I'd
only used Prismacolor up until I got this set. So I love both. But why do you like the Prismacolors more?
The ends are different. with the Prismacolor ones, the tips are velvet, whereas with the Copic, they're felt. So I find the Prismacolor, they glide on the paper a lot more. So when you're doing a lot more of the sketching and things like that, I just find it just moves easy. Whereas the Copic ones, I think for me, they just have too much tooth, and they
kind of grab the paper a little bit too much. Yeah. Also, I found that the edges are much sharper on the Copic ones than the Prismacolor ones. And then you know how I think the Prismacolor ones dry out actually faster than the Copic ones a little bit, or at least mine were drier. And I missed, like, you know how like dry Prismacolors, there's a space for them and a place for them. They're almost like a different color. And I definitely miss those. I had a lot of there's an arts, like a craft store here called Dick Blick. Terrible naming. Yeah, they had their own brand that were equivalent to Prismacolors, and that's what I remember. That's what I could afford when I was in school. I still probably have some of those. I think they're still in my office, that hasn't been opened back up, which I need to go get.
Yeah, it was funny because when I got heavy into some of the conceptual sort of design and things like that, that was the early 2000s. And, basically the film industry, obviously largely the Hollywood sort of one, obviously comes out of the States. And a lot of the key directors and a lot of the talent comes out of, in particular, Art Center. So just in the early 2000s, obviously this is before YouTube, you just could not find any art illustration instruction, anything. It was nothing like what it is today. And the Art Center, a couple of people there then partnered up with a place called Gnomon Workshop, and they started releasing DVDs on, basically illustration, all sorts of things, which is phenomenal. Cool. So I managed to get hold of those, and the materials that they recommended or that they were using, you basically couldn't get in Australia. So it's funny you mentioned Dick Blick. I would have to order the stuff from Dick Blick from the States.
Oh my God.
This was kind of just as you weren't really using credit cards on the internet at that stage.
Yeah, it was still kind of new, and you thought that you were going to get robbed in some way.
Yeah, so you used to have to I would have to go, and usually from the post office, and get checks written up in American currency from Australia.
Oh my God.
And then have to post them off.
That's crazy.
So you'd make an order or something like that, because you just sort of do it on the internet, and it was really the early days of e-commerce. So it's sort of I want to get this and I want to get that, and there wasn't really much of a description or anything. You're sort of hoping that you kind of get the right stuff. So Prismacolors were part of those, and you'd send it off, and the post would take you 2 weeks. You might, if you're lucky, get an email going, "Hey, look, we got your check. We've got to cash it. It's going to take another 2 or 3 weeks," because being they've got to, because it was written in drawn out in Australia. It wasn't straightforward.
Yeah, they needed to make sure it was going to go through. Blah blah blah.
That sort of thing, and so. And then by the time that happened, it would be a month later, and it's oh yeah, we're now out of this thing that you ordered. What do you want to do? Do you want us to send us some money back? It's no, because that's just for you to go and get the check is going to cost more than what you're going to give me back. And it was just such a process. And because it was such a process, I ordered up big on a lot of stuff. So
you would order large amounts and stuff. That makes sense.
Yeah, because the postage was going to be ridiculous anyhow, it always has been. So it's I'm going to get hit with postage. There's just nowhere else, because they didn't have suppliers in Australia. So, yeah, you got through all this sort of stuff, and I'm only now starting to basically wear out or run down all these materials which I've had for, 10, 15 years.
Now you're starting to run out of them.
And now that I'm running out of them and I'm trying to get them again, it's really difficult because Copic have done a brilliant job of marketing. So the Prismacolors, like trying to get them, you can't get them in pretty much any art store in the UK. You used to be able to kind of with some of the sets and things, or through Amazon.
That's kind of crazy. Yeah, I remember Copic was so, when I was in school, Copic was like niche. You know what I mean? It was like, if you like came from money, you had Copic. I just felt like that. I didn't have any, but a lot of people did, and it was like they were so cool. And I don't know, they just were like the really cool ones. And then Prismacolor, everybody had. There's no problems.
Yeah. Whereas now I think it's the other way around. It's like Copic have become, and I think where Copic did really, really well was they got into particularly comic book artists and things like that, convention sketching.
Yeah.
Because all those guys is Copic. And I think, that's where they've been able to do that, and they'd sponsor people, and I think they've now taken so much of the market share away from Prismacolor that Prismacolor are actually on the way out, which, when you prefer one and it's sort of like dying.
Yeah,
it's like,
really frustrating. How about like, how is Prismacolor? Because I know that Prismacolor like dominated like the colored pencil world as well.
Yeah, no problems getting Prismacolor pencils. And that's usually the funny thing is you go on to like Amazon, like UK or anything like that. You type in Prismacolor markers, or, I think they changed the name slightly. They call them Prismacolor Pantone thingies, which is really dumb because then you've got like Pantone as its own separate system. Like back in the CMYK printing days.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, every time you type in Prismacolor, it goes, "Oh, do you want to buy some pencils?" No, I want the markers.
I want the markers. I don't want that pencil garbage. No.
Yeah. Hey, Stud Studios, great to have you around. Haven't seen you guys around for a bit. And then before YouTubers and dinosaurs, there were DVDs. Yeah, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. Stud Sidious. He does some fantastic mocks, but he's done a lot of design and corporate marketing and things for. He's done it for Lego. He's all sorts of. He's based in New York or just outside of New York in Connecticut. And he's a bit old school, so he knows his stuff.
Cool.
That's going to get frustrating because even sometimes with oil paints and things like that, like when you get the big tubes, you generally don't run out for like years and years and years. Now, I've been running out of some of them, and you try to replace them. It's like, oh no, we don't actually make them like that anymore because they had poisonous lead in them, and we can't sell them anymore. It's like, oh right, so
that's good. You probably don't want that.
But the thing is, there's no close substitute, and you get so used to how something handles, and the way it looks, and particularly with color mixing, and just throws that all out the window. And,
I know. You're like, I'd rather have the cancer than the
just give me the disease. I want it to look right.
Just give me the poisonous paint. It's worth it.
So I mean that's why they're sort of doing it and things, but with everything going digital, there's less and less need for physical material.
I feel like to a degree, yes. But, there's still like, I don't know, maybe I'm old school in a sense that I think that there's still, there's a different tactile nature of doing things a certain way. You know what I mean? And like you use a different part of your brain, and that part of your brain needs to be used for it to do good design. I'm not sure how you feel about that, but that could be just me being an old lady set in my ways.
No, I find very much that because with illustration and stuff like that, I find it really difficult to start with a blank screen. Like I'm so much more comfortable, doing some rough sketches and things like that, and then scanning it in and then working off that.
Yeah.
So you've at least got a template, and like what you're saying, there's an element of being tactile. Mm-hmm. and I've been using Photoshop since like 1992, before it was really even Photoshop.
Yeah.
So I know it quite well, and those sorts of things. So it's not being afraid of going digital and things like that.
Same. Like I do a ton of 3D modeling and stuff like that, and I see there's like nothing. Like I'm not afraid of it, but sometimes I like to work, from a sketch, from like a little foam core model. And then you go back and forth. Like it's just an additional tool rather than a replacement. Like at least that's how I see the technology.
Yeah. And I certainly understand in some spheres and things, like, everything has just gotten so much faster in terms of deadlines and things like that. Like, you could have a week to do a painting physically, whereas now you're given like an afternoon to do it digitally.
Yes.
Sort of thing. So there's a completely different time scale. And I get that. Again, you're trying to communicate an idea. You're not trying to do a Rembrandt sort of, painting illustration sort of thing. So, but and part of the reason some of the commercial stuff I stopped doing as much is, for me, it feels like it's become advanced collage. You get a 3D model and you kind of skin it, and you kind of get this element from over here and you get that element from over there, and you come up with this thing which is just too Frankensteinish. Yes, it's still getting the idea across, but there's no intrinsic harmony to it. Like it's if you're doing a little something with paints or consistent medium, and it's kind of losing that
that style,
artistic thing, which I found interesting.
Do you think like people's work is becoming more and more similar, and it's like harder to find someone with a unique hand?
I think there is a bit of that, because I think particularly these days, once somebody develops a technique or a style, particularly if they then go through and sell it as a tutorial or anything like that on a Gumroad or something, then it goes in everybody's toolkit.
Yeah.
Whereas there was a bit more of a style, like as we were talking about before, a Sid Mead or a Ralph McQuarrie or things like that. Like you see one of their images, it's theirs, but there's just no questioning it.
There's no copying.
A lot of because it was much more based upon the hand, whereas now you see it and it's sort of like, well, more or less it could be anyone sort of thing, because
everyone's work kind of looks a little bit the same.
Yeah, it's all getting a bit samey.
I am having a hard time with the proportions of this house. I have started over so many times, and I actually gave up on the Copic. I'm like, I can't use a marker. I'm like pencil and eraser right now. Try to get it just at least the proportions right, and then I can go in. This one's gonna take me a while. Just a heads up here.
Yeah, no, that's fine, because I'm sort of was feeling a bit the same. It's sort of like even just ghosting in the building in the background there. It's like, yeah, no, these proportions aren't working. I'm going back over it and changing it and scaling it.
Yeah, I'm so we didn't pick the same ones. Like for me, the centerpiece is the house itself, and it is hard. It is hard.
Yeah, no, because it's higgledy-piggledy. It's all over the place.
Yeah, exactly. It's what is this, Gothic revival or whatever it is?
Yeah. Whereas I went the other way. You went, oh, the gate's really nice. It's like, yeah, actually it is.
I probably should have taken my own advice for someone who likes to do loose work.
Now, there's always, as you're going through, you'll do a bad sketch. It's just like, yeah, get it over and done with that. On to the next one.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if you heard me. I was ripping out one paper after the next. I was like, that's not happening. This is an expensive notebook. I need to slow down.
Is that what that was? I actually thought you doing your modification to your Lego roof or something. It's like, oh, yeah, just hearing this weird click or something in the background.
No. I definitely started that. I did start that, which is really, I'm actually really enjoying. But that was after I finished the Colosseum, and before we started this. No, but since Adam's Family, I've been committed to this and failing. It's actually coming together. I actually have some vision. Finally.
Get distracted by the chat. What's it? Stud. Even graffiti markers are now insane prices, and that used to be niche. I feel you guys with marker prices, it's gotten even bigger with choices. And then even new digital choices, I stick to old Adobe Illustrator. Everyone has their way. The creative process is awesome to each individual.
Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned 3D. What 3D program do you use?
Revit is really the big one. It's just like a architecture software that's BIM, so building information modeling. So there's a lot of like it's one software that like the structural engineer uses, mechanical engineers use. So it's like we're all kind of in the same thing together. Yeah, and it works really, really, really well.
Is that because once like I've never touched it, but I think I've heard of it. Basically, like as an architect, you can go through, you can start putting elements in, and then that helps to translate to the amount of like, you know, where you need to put the steel beams and the amount of bricks you need. And
yeah, so it's kind of like the way that, remember I was saying at the beginning, like the role of the architect is really to work with like all of the different consultants, right? And like take in all of their constraints and parameters. It's much easier to do that when you know exactly where the concrete needs to go. Yeah, like much easier.
Okay.
You know, like if the concrete that you have is like the placeholder is actually drawn by the structural engineer, you know, you're winning.
Yeah. I think the classic one is the when they launched the Hubble telescope, because they did it across agencies and things like that.
Yeah.
One was working in feet, one was working in imperial, the other was working in metric.
It's very much that. It's like it's to solve that issue, right? It's just to reduce conflict, and it's because in the field, like a ton of problems are found and solutions are made. So to give the general contractor credit for the work that they do, it's very, very difficult. But, you know, they're responsible for coordinating, you know, everybody essentially. And then, you know, they kind of take it out of the architect's hands, you know. Then we try to do everything in our power to get it done as well as possible before, you know, it gets handed off to them.
Because certainly these days, like even in the UK, was about 2015, so 6 years ago.
Yeah,
they ripped through and completely redid all the safety aspects because it wasn't
up to code.
It wasn't like it seemed to be more the sort of thing. It had been designed at a time, like the previous one was for specialists who, you know, who know the stuff or know the jargon or everything backwards. Then it was great for them. But for anybody else who needed to use it, it just wasn't accessible. So they went through, they redid it, they made it more accessible to everyone. But at the same time, in making it more accessible to everyone, they then put more or less everybody else on notice in terms of, okay, this is more accessible, which means you're more responsible.
Exactly, to like keep it up to par. There's no barrier to entry anymore for like having, that makes sense.
So it's, there's a whole safety dimension to things now that you need to really consider. And
that's the biggest part of my job it's the safety. Fire and life safety, getting people out of buildings, you know, it's most important.
Oh, I just saw a studs. I still have zip disks and jazz drives for no reason. Nostalgia. Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm.
Why does he have those? Taking up space in his house. Like, taking up my Lego.
You should back it up with Toss the Tech. I can just never go through it. They collect dust. Yeah, I remember, I think it was about 5 or 6 years ago, just going through a box of stuff because I was notorious for always backing things up and having multiple redundancies. And,
me too. I've lost so much work over the years, but the cloud has saved my life.
Yeah. And coming across some of those old the zip discs, and they were just such an amazing thing at the time because you had this disc which had 100 megs in it.
100 megs, and now it's like, what are we working in terabytes now? Is like the way that we that's
yeah, terabytes, for storage, but it's like you can, your average little USB thumb drive zip thingy or whatever, those now you get those in generally 816 gigabytes for like £4 or what, $6 or something like that. Like it's just such a different world.
Yep. It's crazy. No, I definitely still have some VHS that I don't know why I cannot get rid of. I don't even have a VHS player, let alone like but like, why can't I get rid of like the original copy of Beauty and the Beast that I watched like 3 times a day when I was a kid? Yeah, especially now with Disney Plus, like it makes even less sense.
Yeah, it doesn't like because I know I was looking for about a year ago, Back to the Future, and it was on, I think two of like, it was on Amazon Prime, and I think it was on one of our other ones. So basically, it was all free and stuff like that. And then I thought, right, the kids starting to get into like understanding the general sort of idea of time travel and stuff like that. We'll show it to them. And then I went back to the services, and they're all behind paywalls now. And it's just like, oh, okay. So it's like, right. So now this film, I'm having to pay, what is it, the equivalent of
buying it on DVD almost
$15 for each one to watch. Like, it's just.
So I did for those movies, like the ones that I love that much, and that means so much to me. A couple years ago, I bought like a really nice 4K TV. So I'll buy those on like 4K DVD, which they'll probably get, outdated at some point.
Yeah.
But for now, I think that'll last like a chunk of time. Like Harry Potter, like just the movies that I watch on repeat, and there's probably like 10 to 20 max. Like I don't have a lot like that. I know some people have like big collections, but there's like Back to the Future, Harry Potter, Indiana Jones, a handful of the what's it called? A handful of like the Disney ones. Hocus Pocus. I have like memories, growing up tied to those. And so those are the ones that I've kind of gotten.
What else? Stud, my dad was part of the whole Hubble telescope issue. Burke and Elmer got blamed. I was just a kid. That was a big error. I remember that. Yeah, because it was one of those things where they had, from what I remember, they had perfectly made it to the wrong specification. So it was
like it was perfectly made, but it was just a different unit of measure completely.
Yeah, and it was one of those sorts of things people sort of looked at and went, nobody questioned it. So like, this doesn't seem right, but obviously, and it just became, because nobody questioned it, it got away with it. So then, they put it up in space, and it didn't work. And it's like, now we're going to send a crew up there to fix it in space.
Yeah, let's take this like incredibly complicated, difficult thing and make it harder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In one of the most unforgiving environments, not on this earth, actually.
But yeah, exactly.
Perk and Elmer was a big engineering part of the Hubble. I remember my dad was stressed as, that's why I became a graphic designer, not an engineer or architect. I remember the script. Yeah, that's one of the reasons I kind of left engineering.
The pressure?
Because you could see that it was going to defensive engineering.
Yep.
And also too, like something we spoke about earlier, or you sort of mentioned in reference, earthquakes. Now, Australia doesn't, like, it sits on its own tectonic plate. So, the nearest edge to that plate is like New Zealand, which is why they get a lot of earthquakes and things like that. So in the late 80s, they had a 2.8 earthquake, which, because Australia never had it before, you had a couple of big clubs which fell down and people died.
Yeah.
And even like at that stage, because they never had earthquakes, there was a couple of the engineering firms who did the designs for it.
Yeah.
And earthquakes were not part of code. But they had actually gone through and said, okay, let's just allow for some form of an earthquake. So they had considered it. And of course, they all went to court and everything like that. And because people died and whatever else, they actually got found against.
But it wasn't even part of building code. It wasn't.
I know, but it's this thing where they're going for the deep pocket because you've had, there's been an incident, there's been a tragedy, they need to pay compensation. Where's the deep pocket? And it was just mental. It's sort of like you were designing for something which didn't even exist. You're going beyond what was recognized, and you were still found to be negligent. And it's like, how does that?
A lot of code now and like requirements and like contracts and stuff are written to kind of protect you against that now, at least here. I don't know when that change was made, but it's very much like, like what you sign up for is to basically do within reason, what the average of other architects or other engineers, you know what I mean, within the field, within the area would be doing. That is what you're basically required to do C-level work is what it is. You know what I mean? Like, and if that's outside of negligence, right? Negligence is something else entirely, but that's all that's really, really required. And anyway.
Yeah, so it was.
Yeah.
And the other thing was just sort of look at it, like even if you're a doctor or something like that, you can only kill one person at a time. But if you design a building which is full and it collapses, you're killing a lot of people all at once.
Yep, you can absolutely do that.
And and then I'd spent a bit of time working on site, and that just really opened up my eyes. Like, it's just, you're working on site. Like we were doing, this was in the lead up to the Sydney 2000 Olympics. So construction was crazy, like, because there were, the economy was going well, all that sort of stuff. So you couldn't get workers. And you had the real pressure of, you're working on a high-rise building, and it's got to hit targets. It's got to be moving at a certain rate, liquidate damages, blah, 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 blah. So the pressure was phenomenal. And you'd have the safety thing. You would have guys, like, because you're 20 stories up, they're hanging out the side of the building with safety harnesses next to them.
Yep.
So
and no one's paying attention because inspectors are busy. They're understaffed. People aren't,
Well, it's the sort of thing, because we were the main, the main builder contractor firm sort of thing. It was partially our responsibility. So you had to go along and you'd say to the person, right, come in, you have to put that on. You cannot do that.
That's an awful job to be in. Who wants to be in that position? Yeah. And
you would literally, they would do that, and you go down to the next floor, you come back up 5 minutes later, they've taken it off, they're hanging back out the building. So you then, I would throw people off site. It's like, no, you're warned. You can't. Like, this just does. Because they're so short of staff, that person would be back the next day. And it's just like, what's going on here? Like, and they'd be back the next day hanging off the side of the building again. It's just, and so, you're doing everything you possibly can, yet if they fall down, you'll run to a lawyer.
And you're the one responsible, not them, by the way, even though they're the ones acting like children.
Yeah. And it's the sort of thing, it's like, well, I told him 10 times not to do that. I threw him off site. They brought back. Well, why didn't you tell him 11 times? And it's like, well, so, yeah.
Is that your job at that point, 11 times?
But it's the sort of thing, if somebody falls off, again, it's going for the deep pocket, it's going for responsibility. It doesn't matter what you do. It's never going to be enough. At least that's the way which I felt. And it's like, you know what? I might just go draw some pretty pictures, because the worst I can do is offend people.
No, I totally feel you. That's like kind of, I'm just like, I'm sick and tired. Like right before I, started my sabbatical, I literally was in the building department hand drawing, like fire and life safety requirements for a building just to get it permitted, because the inspector or like the plans checker had created some kind of vendetta against the client, and like, which was a developer. And so it made it impossible to get this permit. And so everything was behind on construction. Everything was like, everybody was screaming at me because at the end of the day, the responsibility to get the permit is the architect's. And so even though like the developer had made a mistake, you know, and had like created that toxic relationship with the city, they because they thought they were just entitled and they could like kind of come in and do what they wanted when they wanted, and that they had ownership for it. Like it was just like I was stuck in the middle, and I had like no control over any of my own ethics. They're like, just do that, just sign it, just stamp it, just do it. And they're like, we'll pay you more, you know, it doesn't matter. Like everyone's losing money, like COVID, blah, blah, blah. And I found out, by the way, that everything is now like on hold, and it was, you know, I didn't do it. But it was definitely like, there was some animosity there, but the pressure that was put on me was just, it was made up. It's like, we're not saving lives. And if we don't, you know, we're not doctors in an emergency room. And if we don't pay attention to our jobs, like we could actually hurt people. Anyway. So
it sounds like, you know exactly.
Yeah.
You put in this impossible position.
Always, constantly, and impossible position in so many different ways, not just like from like a life safety perspective and a responsibility perspective, but also like from a staffing. They're like, here's this horrible building that like someone screwed up that we fired just a week ago, and can you fix it in a week? And we're not going to give you any staff to do it because this project's out of money because that person that we fired wasted all of it.
Yeah, we're not going to give you any money to do it.
No.
So, yeah. Here, let me just pull the magic wand out of this place over here.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like, where is it coming from? Oh, Cece's here. Hey, Cece.
Hey, Cece. Hope you're going well. And Kim, hello. Hope that you're going well as well. Is everyone saying there? And Stud, Cece is asking if you got new shelves, Claire.
I didn't. I just moved them from my living room here because I'm getting the new shelves from my living room, and there were like books and stuff, but I just dedicated these to just Lego right now. So it's an IKEA shelf that I've moved too many times for an IKEA shelf to be okay. So it's probably going in the dumpster if it wants to be moved ever again. Yay, disposable furniture. Yeah.
But you did say it was IKEA, wasn't it?
Yes, exactly.
So, yeah, no, I'm not knocking the fact that it's IKEA, but it's not like an expensive ancient.
No, it's not.
Something.
It's not. It's just more like cool. We're just putting stuff in the landfill, you know. Oh well.
Yeah, that's. What else we got there? Everyone's saying hi. Let's see now. And just let me look. What do we have? What would be your favorite design style? Or something which you
for what though? For myself to live in, to visit, to appreciate. You know what I mean? It's just such a loaded question here. You know, it's like asking you what's your favorite kid?
Oh, I know the answer to that one. No,
Okay.
That's not a hard question. We have a spare.
Yes.
Hopefully they're going to bed and they're not watching. But
yeah, that's why you get a second one, right? It's like in case you lose the first. No, that's an awful thing to say. Sorry.
Yeah. It has been joked about.
Okay, good.
I guess. Let's just run through them one at a time. Okay. Favorite ones to visit then, or to see.
I think like Gaudi, like the Art Nouveau kind of stuff is the coolest because it's so different. And it looks like to me it's like Disneyland for architects because it's so weird and so funky. That's probably my favorite to visit. And then I would say that to live in would be contemporary architecture. Like I really like the newer stuff, you know, like big, like kind of the first thing we drew.
Yeah.
I don't know. How about you?
It's funny that you should mention. I'm just trying to pull something up. If I can just find it, there was Art Nouveau. Big fan of that. I don't know why. What is that?
Like Villa, like Sagrada Familia and all that stuff.
I think it's just the lines and the curves. Yeah, there was. I'll just share the screen because I remember.
Okay.
There's this Russian one. Just, yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay.
A really bizarre one to go to. A guy by the name of, butchered, Friedor Schachtel, I think it is.
Schachtel or something like that. I've definitely seen him. He was definitely in the books when we studied.
Yeah. It's the only way I came across it, like back in the day, I had a couple of art history teachers who were brilliant, and it was one of those sort of things where they could make anything interesting. Yeah. So I would just go and sit in on their classes because it was a really weird situation. But basically, I wasn't really enrolled at that school, so
I'm still going, even though I'm getting up. Keep going. Yeah, you were. Okay, and
so, and then one of them happened to be, his dad was a diplomat, and they spent a lot of time in Russia. So he really knew the all the weird and wonderful sorts of things. In particular, this guy, because at the, he does his stuff in the 1910s and 1920s. At the time, he was sort of in vogue with government and things like that, and that whole sort of thing. If you're in the know and you're one of the selected people, you can do all your work. But then obviously they had revolutions and all the rest of it, so his stuff sort of fell off to the wayside. And it's only been the last 5 or 10 years that it's really started to be rediscovered. And the short version is he did this house. It's just like a private residence, and I mean, it sounds like you've at least seen it or know about it. But the whole idea was, it was basically sort of like the one floor was above the ocean, the other floor was below the ocean.
Oh, cool! It's just so whimsical.
And you had this amazing staircase, and he designed like the house and the staircase and everything. And it's not really a tourist sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like it's ultra niche. Like if even a few years back, like finding this was really difficult. So anyhow, I've
definitely seen that photo of that staircase before.
Yeah, because it's become quite famous. Like it's been kind of rediscovered and things like that. And we went to, what was it, Russia? I think it was 2010 or 2011. Which is an experience in itself, because this is before, okay, yes, you did have smartphones, but you didn't have it in any sorts of usable way. Like you couldn't use maps, you couldn't do anything, because you're paying like $5 or £5 a megabyte sort of thing, and the apps just weren't there. And the thing with Russia is, because you don't use a like a Greco-Roman sort of alpha 26 character alphabet, they use their own sort of thing.
So you can't read signs, and it's like,
well, you can't read signs, but also too, when you as an English tourist get a map, there's like an English tourist version of the names of everything. So even if you have a map and you're standing there in the street and you're looking at the sign, they're going to say different things. So anyhow, we had a guide who'd take us around to different places, which was really cool. And we mentioned this because I knew of it. It's like, I want to go and see this place. And his eyes just lit up. He's like,
he knew of it. He had heard of it?
He'd heard of it. Like, he was a big fan of it. He's like, I've been doing this for like 15 years and nobody has ever asked for it. And
oh my God, how cool.
It's the sort of thing, like, it wasn't even really a tourist sort of place. So it wasn't set up to be visited as such.
Okay.
But because he knew of it and things like that, and there was a connection or whatever, he was able to get us into this place.
Amazing.
And yeah, you just go in and it's like just us. And it's, really, like what you say, it's really whimsical and things like that. And it's, so that was the little things there. So when you mentioned Art Nouveau and things like that, it's like,
that your mind immediately went there. Yeah, there's some cool stuff, right? It's super playful. It's like totally out there. It's so, Disney. it's like the real life Disney of sorts, you know, like in a way, like it doesn't seem real, but like, and it was so intentional. And just imagine like the patron that like supported that was like, you know what, I want that in my house. It's so yeah.
Well, I also think too, it's one of those things, particularly in those sorts of it's because I mean, obviously they became communist later on, but
yeah,
in those
rigid, there's literally architectural styles called Stalinistic, you know, it's like
but it's very much like if you have to be in favor with the government of the day sort of thing, and then because, you know, they obviously had Stalin and revolutions and all sorts of bits and pieces in between, like things very easily got forgotten and, you know, washed over and all the rest of it. And it's only in recent times that, you know, particularly you can start to get all the information and stuff back on it. Because I remember doing a project on that. When was that? That was like design school 2005.
nice.
So Wikipedia had only just started, and that guy's entry was like 2 lines long, whereas now you could see it like it's fully fleshed out.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's recognized and
and people being able to reassess it and everything. So I think for me the reason the Art Nouveau stuff is because, again, you generally don't get it in Australia, but you get it a lot in Europe. Obviously, you know, heavily in Paris and France.
yeah, same. You don't have it in the US really. I'm probably drawn to it because of that too.
Yeah. And I think it's just, for me, it's more just the lines and the sweeps and the curves. Like, it's not that rectilinear sort of, you know, isometric, geometric sort of shaping. It's got a bit of movement to it.
I do love this house that we're drawing, though. This is a lot of fun. And there's tons of houses like this all over the US that just like are begging to be like renovated, which would be really cool. That would be a fun project if I had all the time and resources in the world.
And the patron.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I know it's like reality TV and all sorts of things, but you've got that show, American Pickers.
I've never heard of it. What's it about?
Oh, okay. You have these guys who drive around the US and they look for more or less old, sort of rundown or just extensive farms and things, like with barns and stuff like that, where you've had the house has been in the family for like 4 or 5 generations. So, you know, just got barns full of stuff. Yeah. You know, I mean, like old sorts of tractors and machineries and bikes and, you know, bottles and, you know, all these sort of antiques and things. And the idea is they go around and basically, you know, it's called pickers because they go through and, you know, basically have a chat with the owners and so, like, you know, let's have a look, because a lot of people sort of either don't know what's there or, you know, they need
value and stuff that
clear out, or, you know, somebody comes along and says, look, you know, you've got a few really nice antique pieces here, here's a couple thousand in cash, you know, they can really help out, or, you know, whatever else. So but it's just seeing those places which have been in the family for 100 years, and you just got stuff everywhere, and the stuff that they pull out of it. Okay, yeah, this is going to be the reality TV element to it. But again, it's just not something which conceptually you sort of grow up with in Australia that much.
I noticed, like, so we have some family in Australia, and like my family and I have been like plenty of times, but like everything is very contemporary and modern there, which is probably why I'm so drawn to that, to the style, because like we don't really have it here. It's like really like Miami has a lot of it, you know, but like it's contemporary architecture is just not that popular here, in the same way that it is in a lot of places. Like what I showed, like what was the first thing that we drew, you know?
Yeah.
And so, which I'm like dying to live in a house like that, while something like the Addams Family house is probably, you know, more akin and more typical, you know. It's, even though it's like a like a fantastical version of it, you know?
Yeah, no, it's you would never get anything like that in Australia. It's just like, and you can see where, you know, again, going back to what we were talking about before, where things are always rooted in or grounded in something which has been real or is real.
Mm-hmm.
It's not completely fantastical in itself. So
no, it's like a Gothic revival architecture that is like very common, like in the Midwest here, you know, in the U.S.
Yeah. Feel myself just noodling with this.
The house?
The gate.
Oh, the gate. Yeah. This is definitely a different challenge than the other things that we've done. Thank you, Mr. Hinkle, for pushing us to our limits. First time in like years, you know, get really.
Because Kevin, he does his draw stream on Friday, and I've been on his and he's been on mine, sort of thing. So he's great at that sort of thing. But so there's become a bit of a running gag sort of thing at the moment, where I found out he hates drawing horses.
No way.
Yeah. So whereas I'm the other way, it's sort of like, if you like, people are really difficult to draw because it's the sort of thing, if you get something like 1 or 2% out, you know, if you get a face 1 or 2% out on different features and things like that, it just falls apart.
Yeah.
Whereas if you have a horse, you can get like 30-40% out before it will fall apart, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I don't find horses all that challenging to draw, but Kevin just hates it for some reason. So you know, each to their own, sort of thing. So
of course.
Always trying to get him to draw some sort of horse sort of thing. And he had a Patreon thing where you provide like a silhouette or a shape, and then you go through and just make a drawing out of it. So I gave him one which was the outline of a horse, but I rotated it 180 degrees.
Yeah.
So he went through and he looked at it and he did his little shape thing, and then he was testing out his new Wacom. So then he went, oh, okay, I'm just going to rotate this now 90 degrees so it's something slightly different. And as soon as he rotated, he saw the horse in it straight away. It's like, oh, I can't believe you did that. Like,
yeah.
And he did it on a live stream, and it's just, he thought it was very funny, and you could sort of see or hear in his voice.
Just, no. Yeah. That's so good.
Because when he had a guest on and they were doing, I think it was just general comic heroes and things. There's a Thor type character, which is basically a horse sort of thing. So again, I suggested it, and then his guest picked up on it. Went, oh yeah, that sounds like a great Thor to draw. And it's like, oh yeah, it's the horse version. So, yeah, anyhow. I don't know how we got onto that. But...
the cruelty of one artist.
Oh yeah. So it's probably just Kevin getting back.
Well, I'm glad I got sucked into it.
Yeah, because you did choose it, actually.
I did. I chose it. It's my fault.
So I guess then we're talking about the styles in terms of your visiting. In terms of designing, what do you sort of...
Oh, definitely contemporary. That's like what I've really been trained in, you know, like really, like if there were no clients and I could do what I wanted, I would do like homes, like really beautiful homes. But oh well. I also really like designing like Lego spaces. I think that's super fun and storage, because I love cleaning and storing spaces and things. And you know what I mean? Like I loved, like at the beginning of COVID, I ended up redoing like the inside of my closet, like that, like just really small projects sometimes are fun. And I'm probably drawn to them because I've just done years of huge stuff, I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's going the other way and just different
Yeah,
challenges and
exactly.
yeah, exercising different
Muscles.
concepts or ideas. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and if you were doing your own dream house,
Mm-hmm.
what sort of features would it have? Or, you'd go, oh, I want this, or I'd want to do that.
Probably like lots of open space, like a center courtyard, definitely a pool, indoor, outdoor, like living and kitchen, and like that, like kind of what you were talking about, just that like flow between the inside and the outside of the exterior and the interior is really, really important. That's kind of what I would do. Just lots of open space and smaller bedrooms, bigger public spaces. Yeah, it's probably I don't see the desire to have like big bedroom spaces. That's not, for me.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And if you, obviously, you spend a bit of time when you're younger in the UK, and you're in San Francisco at the moment. Have you been there for very long, or?
Well, I grew up in the Bay Area, and so I stayed here until I was like 18, then went to the East Coast, lived in the Midwest, the Pacific Northwest, South America, are probably all the places I've like lived, and obviously the UK. Yeah, and so I've been like around a lot of different architectural types and precedents and stuff. So it's definitely impacted like my design aesthetic. Okay, so let's see where I ended up.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So I took forever. I kept it black and white too, as though it was like from the TV show or whatever, Yeah. So I don't know. It took a lot out of me.
No, that's great. It looks like you did get the proportions in the end and just nailed it there. So
it looks better from far away, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. When you take it far away,
well, that's what, right? Isn't that what you're supposed to do? Is like be able to see something from 6 feet apart if it's a good painting or something like that.
Yeah, it's that whole sort of thumbnail sort of thing. Is if it works as the size of a postage stamp sort of thing, then it will generally hold up from a long way. But it's sort of interesting how you also tapped into the black and white sort of feel and things, because that's much what I was sort of thinking as well. I mean, apart from
the best part of it, right?
It makes it. If you're keeping it monochromatic, it's easier to deal with.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I'm like, well, especially because all the stock photos are all monochromatic, so I'm like, okay, well, I don't know what color, or they're like versions of like kind of like a gross brown. So
yeah, it's sort of that sepia, or it's very heavily tinted in one narrow flavor, because I'm sort of seeing a greeny turquoisey blue, which is very dark, and stuff like that. Let's see. I think I'll just push one more level of tone, and then how are we going for the time-wise? How are you feeling?
I'm okay. I'm definitely, my hand was starting to hurt a little. I have arthritis in my right hand, so I probably can't go too much longer. How are you doing?
I'm.
Oh, we're at the 3-hour mark.
Yeah, we're pretty much at 3 now. I'm just sort of wondering if you got one more in you, and then we'll just call it.
I could do one more.
Yeah, I think do that. I just want to quickly hit the bit more tone on this, just to push it in and out, and then I think I kind of went for a bit more of the the really design bit of reference, so it didn't
Yeah.
have everything angular. Oh, sorry, it didn't have everything like perpendicular and straight lines. It's all curvy.
No, I love it. That was probably the smarter decision.
Oh no, giving away all the secrets. And then yeah, of course you've got the big old gate there. So
That's awesome. It's like house at the top of the hill.
yeah, let's just see if I can just pop that up for a sec. So see. Yeah, then we got the house, the gate there, and probably just chop the edge off there. But there it is.
Right, because you hate the white space.
Yeah, it just feels like it's. I was one of the. I think it was one of my drawing teachers back in the day. It's like, how does it engage with the edge of the page? It's
yep, yeah.
It's like it doesn't. Okay then. All right then. One more. What do we want to go for? We've got the Opera House, Tower Bridge, Tower of London, what they call the Gherkin in London, the Burj Al Arab, the Pantheon, or the Empire State. I think was that. Or I think there was an anime one. Let's sort of see if we get reference. Let's show it to know if you. Is that coming through?
Yeah, it's coming. Is that what the anime one is?
Yeah, so it's sort of more. I mean, obviously, you can sort of see there. I mean, I can always, if you're interested,
it's like a big tower. I don't know. I'm down for whatever you pick. This is your turn to pick. I picked Adam's Family.
Just trying to think. Okay, or the other alternate one, which is probably a bit similar to what we just did. Sort of like an old chateau, sort of.
Which one's that one?
It's another anime sort of one, but obviously it's grounded in whatever.
In a castle, yeah.
Yeah, the details look like it might kill us. Okay, let's just do the anime one. What I'll do you have your because I can Instagram that across to you. Let's see if I can
Yeah,
see.
what's it called? I can just Google it. How did you spell it? Do you want to just put it on the screen and then I'll Google it?
I can. Yeah, I'll just drop it in the. Okay, yeah, no.
Or something.
No, if we're gonna do it, we can use it there. It's year ago. Like, there's no way I would. If I spelled that, yeah. So, that's what.
Okay, I think. Did you spell Academy incorrectly?
Yeah, no, I spelled Academy incorrectly. So yeah,
okay, cool.
But yeah, that.
Okay.
Might just see if I can also.
Yuriko Koro, I thought it was versus Coca.
Yeah, I've spelled part of that wrong too.
Okay, cool. No, that's okay. I'm just Google is like suggesting things.
It's a G-A-O-K-A. Yeah, I think it was a combination of autocorrect one to.
Yeah, I can't find it on Google.
Yeah, I just had a quick look, and unless that's. Yeah, I think it'd just be as easy. I can just
Yeah, do you want to send it to me?
That to you. Yeah.
Or Instagram or whatever is fine.
Sorry, yeah, Instagram though.
Yeah, that's cool.
Sometimes just forget which. There's so many different ones these days.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, just send it to me whenever.
Yeah, I'm just gonna try that. It's here, and then think that's direct to you. So you should have that on your Instagram now.
Okay, cool.
Not that there. Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, one suggests a lot of anime stuff, which I've never heard of most of the time.
Cool.
So that's why. But it's good because then it just exposes you to other different things that you otherwise wouldn't come across. And then, yeah, giving you the correct spelling there. So that's cool. Alrighty then. And is there any, I guess the other one, is there any sort of building style or something that you would like to see in Lego, or you wish they would do a design of or something?
I love all like the Asian inspired ones, like Ninjago City and all the Chinese New Year sets. And I feel like I haven't gotten enough of those. I would definitely love more. That's what I would want more of those. At least right now, that's kind of in the short term. I don't know. How about you?
Yeah, it is. I think the Ninjago City and the docks are ones which obviously saw in the store and went, yeah, I might pass on those. And then they released obviously the Gardens one. It's like, yeah, I wish I didn't pass on those now. I guess, yeah, it'd probably be some of the more Art Nouveau type ones, just anything. I mean, obviously you had the Parisian restaurant, which was really cool. Built that. I guess there's only, without getting too many more specialized pieces, there's only so much they can kind of do with it.
Totally. I think, but you know how they did Tower of Orthanc for Lord of the Rings? I feel like they could do Sagrada Familia if they can do Tower of Orthanc.
And then it becomes the other thing, like some of those ones were during the Dark Age sort of thing. So there's a lot of those ones from the 2000s and that, which you just never really seen or know of. Like, I think some of the Pirates of the Caribbean, the Indiana Jones stuff, than the ones that you're referring to there as well. Let's try to. Just put that off to the side there.
I don't think I'm going to be able to do this one justice.
Yeah, I'm just trying to.
Yeah, how are you going to do it?
I was thinking maybe just. So done everything with the markers and that. I might just do a straight up and down pen one. Which another way I used to do things where, particularly sketching, is sort of keeping it really loose, but then you just every mark it's sort of used.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a challenging one because I think when you don't have much context on a building or how it is or the storyline, things like that, it's really okay. And that's what I find when you usually get a lot of the anime style ones. It's like I don't know the stories. I don't.
Have you ever watched any anime or?
Yeah. Certainly. I mean, you've always got the classic sort of ones, which they always transferred across, which is like the Robotech and the Macross sort of stuff. Some of the 90s stuff. I mean, of course, Akira. I think just about everybody who's got any interest in anime seen that one. And then I think in the 90s they had it's a really funny one, Realm No One Half. Just trying to remember the storyline for it. I think it's the people. I think did they turn into a panda, or they turned into it was a weird transformation one, and the whole gag was based around them transforming, but then sort of not knowing that the other person did, sort of thing. It was like a really weird love triangle or something. Like,
oh, interesting.
And Cowboy Bebop, which I think was more early 2000s, which is kind of more of a space bounty hunter type thing. I mean, have you seen much sort of anime?
No, I haven't. Very little, like very, very little actually. Like I used to watch Sailor Moon when I was younger, and that's probably about it.
Yeah.
But I appreciate it and enjoy it for like what it is, and I have like, you know, Avatar on my list of must watches. And I guess I've watched Kiki's like delivery service, like stuff like that.
Yeah, and the Monkey Kid is obviously leaning heavily into that style.
Yes, and that's my favorite. Yeah, that's my favorite theme right now too. Like I love all that stuff.
Yeah, I think for me, because I remember watching in the 80s as a kid, the original. They used to call it Monkey Magic. I think in different places they called it different things. Like I think in America they may have called it Journey into the West or something.
Yeah.
And it was really badly dubbed and everything, but it was just, I don't know, when you're a kid that age and you got this guy who summons a flying cloud, and it's just really,
it's cool. That's some pretty cool stuff. It's true.
And then my dad at one stage, he actually got the original, well, not the original, but a version. It wasn't a comic book, but it was like a serious. What's the best way to describe it? There's an illustrated book of the original legend sort of thing.
Oh, cool!
But done in like a very, I guess, the equivalent of what would be an Asian fine art sort of take. So it was done really seriously and beautifully done. And you know, when you're really young and you see this comic in this style, like in that sort of, you know, when you see Japanese scrolls and things, or the Chinese ones, and they're all sort of whimsical, and they got, you know, it's just completely different language. So yeah, that really obviously stuck in my mind, because you've never seen anything like it. It's like, what is this thing? Like, it's not like, because you're kind of expecting like an adaptation from the show, so seeing like, you know, the characters done like that, but no, it's the actual sort of scroll version of it.
Yeah, like the ancient like illustration style. So cool. Yeah, there's this really in San Francisco, because there's like, you know, a huge like Asian population here and stuff. We have a really great Asian American museum. And there's tons of beautiful stuff in there. That's, you know, along the same lines of that. That's really cool that your dad like brought something like that home. Yeah,
he was huge into Chinese culture and things like that. Like he went to China as a tourist, and I think it was like 1981 or something like that. Like basically when, you know, nobody was doing that. Like it wasn't even a thing. Like it's
that's really early. That's like when like Fuchsia Dunlop went out to Chengdu and like started really discovering like Chinese food. And she like brought that really to the West. She like made it. You know, she wrote cookbooks and whatnot to, you know, really made it more accessible.
Yeah, and obviously, I mean, I would imagine America's a little bit same as Australia in terms of proximity to Asia. So there's a heavy Asian community influence. Like, I mean, it's just
especially the West Coast. Yeah, for sure.
And that was the one thing. Like the art galleries in Australia generally are For European stuff or even American stuff,
Mhm.
it's just woeful. Like
Mhm.
you might have a fourth-rate Picasso sort of thing. Like it's something that he did on like an off day sort of thing. Like
Right.
you don't get anything like the density and things that you would in the Met or any
Yeah.
of those sorts of ones. But the one thing that they are strong on is the Eastern and Asian art.
Yep.
So
Same
you
thing.
always,
Exactly.
yeah. Which is just hard because a lot of the the Western sort of art, you sort of know it, or your gateway into it is either religious Christianity type stuff or Greek mythology.
Yeah, but the religious Christianity type stuff, that was like the biggest. That was the biggest art patron for the longest time. So, which makes sense for both art and architecture, especially in like Western culture, to be just like full of that, like rich with it.
Yeah. Well, then also too, when you're looking at it in context, like, excuse me, sorry.
No, you're fine.
It wasn't until more or less the 1850s ish when they decided to basically have people outside of the upper class and nobility have the ability to read.
Yeah.
And that wasn't done sort of in some sort of altruistic sort of thing. That was done more as we're going into the Industrial Revolution. And the problem you used to have was people would go, they'd work in the factories, they'd get paid. And once they got paid, they'd then take 4 or 5 days off to go and spend all their money that they just got paid.
Yeah.
Which, owning a factory in production and all the rest of that sort of stuff, you can't do that. So schools were basically set up like public schools as we know them, where everybody's got access.
Mm-hmm.
It was basically set up so that you could train people that, you go to school 5 days a week or whatever it is. You go to work 5 days a week. So
that you're ready for that workforce life.
Yeah. So you're used to it. Also, too, you're this idea of just following instructions and all that sort of stuff, which, it's in the day of the internet and everything like that. It's starting to break down really badly.
Yes,
I think America is much further ahead in terms of celebrating entrepreneurship, if I could say it like that.
It is. There's definitely. It's always. It's like that is what the definition of land of opportunity has kind of like become in terms of that. The difference, though, is that fundamentally, though, our society is still set up in those old school ways. So you can embrace it, but it's still harder. It's still like a. We only hear about the people who succeeded. Not the ones who fail.
Yeah. And that's certainly once you go through and you start looking at those things, it's that selective bias where you only, that's what you're saying, you're hearing about the very few success stories and not the
it's always like
10,000 horrendous, not horrendous, but the failures. But I certainly think with like the numbers and things on the education system, and certainly with automation and everything like that, a lot of the jobs you go and get college degrees for and things like that, they're getting hollowed out by software, and how much longer that's sustainable for. And
yes,
sure.
But then the degrees themselves are changing, right? You still have to go to college to be a software engineer, and there's an endless need for those.
Well,
that
I don't know. Like, I mean, you look at some of the best programmers and things like that. They generally don't come out of.
No, but those are. I mean, they're like learned. They taught themselves, but I think those guys are prodigies, and they had the self-discipline to do that. The reason we have school is because it's like a rubric for people to follow, you know what I mean, who can't maybe motivate themselves. It's like, it kind of like, if you look at school as like a way to like handhold you through that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's like a lot of people can't just like self-teach, which is like a really important task, but it's very difficult. I just think it's like a bit easier said than done,
Yeah, it's I don't know. I guess I fall into that category of being able to self-teach. I mean, that's
Yeah.
like being able to do most of the things, and particularly nowadays, like where YouTube is, you go on there, pretty much anything you could ever want to learn is more or less there. Okay, it might not be in a nice curriculum structure that you'd get out of a university as such.
Yeah. But some people can't focus and stuff in like an environment just by going on YouTube and stuff, you know? So it's like there needs to be, I don't know, there needs to be some kind of structure. Otherwise people could get lost, you know, and go down that YouTube, you know, darkness, you know?
The rabbit hole that is there.
Exactly. Yeah, it's so easy. And then I think learning discipline is something that's very underrated. And it's something that unfortunately like structures like school and work teach you. And you have, and having self-discipline is much, much harder.
What's Funny Fig said there? And hello to Brick Adjuster. Avatar is a much watch. Yeah, let's do that. Like, don't waste time on any other anime or cartoon. They just won't live up to it. Okay. There you go. And we need to watch one more.
There you go.
Just watch Avatar and we're done.
I have heard.
Well, isn't that because I don't know that well. CC in her.
Yes.
That's
the background. Yeah.
Yeah.
Avatar.
But that's also too where I think schools and that need to change in terms of.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree.
You need to be able to figure out how to learn stuff and be that more self-motivated or.
Yes.
Yeah.
No. I agree.
I certainly think, the skill used to be, at least in my generation, was actually finding information. Like, finding information was a real challenge because you didn't have the internet, so you just had to be able to find it. Whereas now I think it's completely the other way. It's filtering information. Like, you just go on Google or whatever. It's like you get anything you ever want and then some.
Right. And learning how to like stop yourself. Do you know what I mean? And being like, this is enough. I've figured out enough. I can move on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's also because you can just keep going and
but still then also having that critical rationale and things.
Yes.
Without getting too much down a rabbit hole, but just as a general thing, being able to determine or have some analysis on what is that fake news? Is that real? Is that?
Yes, I think that's something that's not taught at all.
And I think, unfortunately, with one of the casualties with the open internet and everything like that, like information is all free and things like that, because it's free, it then means a lot of your investigative journalism, there's not funds there to pay for it anymore.
No, not at all. Not at all. And then there's a lot of like nonsense on the internet and influencers who have impacts on vulnerable populations that believe, just things that aren't based in science. And then it becomes like, public endangerment.
Yeah, which I'm seeing that a lot with, because I feel more of a heavy analytical sort of bent. Like, when people present you with statistics and facts and things like that, being able to see through what is being selectively presented and things. It's like, okay, well, 1% of this is happening. And it's like, well, yeah, but that means 99% of it isn't happening. And, are you having the tail wag dog, or, what that 1%, how sensitive or how important is that? Which, going to what you're saying, you sometimes get influencers who just pick up on that headline and present it as gospel out to their masses. And it's like, this is really interesting.
It's super interesting and super dangerous at the same time.
Yeah, that's because at least before you sort of had, with traditional media outlets, there was a bit of a gatekeeping and editorial sort of oversight. So, sure, depending upon which way you're skewing or which agenda you're serving,
Yeah, there was like a checks and balances. Mm-hmm.
Whereas that generally isn't there anymore, or it's very weak.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
So,
Okay. Do you want to see mine?
Yep.
Okay.
Let's just put you up on the big screen there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. Cool. I always love the looseness that you have with your stuff.
Very, very loose.
So, very, very bold and just,
Mm-hmm.
no. And I think I've gone as something completely contrasting.
Yeah, you're so tight and so detailed.
Yeah, tight and just like, just trying to get, probably only down to there sort of thing. So, cool. Alrighty then. No, that's, I don't know if you have yours all in the same book. Do you just want to do a quick recap?
Yeah, I've got all of mine here.
What you've got there. I'll put you up on the big. Oh, and I'll just get rid of this tag for a sec. So you see, there we go.
So Villa Savoie was first by Le Corbusier, and then the Eiffel Tower, and then we did the Colosseum, which is, I think this is my favorite one that I did.
Yeah, no, that's
and then the Addams Family House.
The Addams Family House, and that was what, take 3 or 4?
5, I think.
5. Okay.
5. Yeah, because I started with this like roof, this roof area, and like getting these proportions to all work, and then and then finally the anime one.
The anime one there.
Yep.
Yeah, we've got, what is it? Yuguri.
Yurigako.
Yeah.
Yurigo Academy, maybe.
I'll quickly just run through the same ones.
Okay.
So we started off the Villa Savoy.
Savoie. I know it doesn't look like it. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. And then after that we had the Eiffel Tower. And then my take on the Colosseum, which we did pretty much the same sort of reference.
Yes.
And then the Addams Family one. And I picked up on you suggesting the gate, so we did that. And then, the last one was the animated one, the Yuriko Academy. So excellent, cool. Alrighty then. I think we'll just pretty much wind up with the last little bits and pieces. So what if you got sort of coming up on your channel? Where can people find you? All that sort of stuff.
I'm on Instagram and YouTube as a plastic architect. Tomorrow I'm doing a ladies live stream with Emily, Amasaurus, Brenda from Art and Jest. She's actually, I think she usually streams with I'm Bored Toys. Cece's going to be there from Cafe Corner. Steph from Brick and It. There's a lot of ladies that'll join, so that'll be really fun. And then I've been just streaming like a lot lately with different people, so I've been really enjoying it. I really like the format. And that's it for me.
Okay, yeah, definitely. And for anyone who's out there, Claire's also does applying the architectural sort of knowledge to some of her videos and things, which is, I think they're fantastic. So definitely go and check them out. The one on, again, the Parisian restaurant, I really enjoyed that. And even, I think your most recent one was on the
medieval blacksmith.
Yeah. I'm thinking bricksmith. It's like, no, that's not quite right.
Yeah.
So, definitely. And as for me, I think I'll be back sort of same time next week sort of thing, doing it all again. I don't think that's the main thing, I think, at this stage. So I haven't really thought about next week's topic and things like that. But no, thanks very much, Claire, for coming along and doing that. And if you want another draw stream, you've got Funny Figs is tomorrow on his channel, and he does some really cool stuff. His thing is he doesn't use reference, and he has a great banter usually with his wife. It only goes for about an hour. I think it's it used to be at like 5:30, 6:30 UK time, so whatever that works out tomorrow. Just check out Ray's Funny Figs. Kevin Hinkle does his, I think it's like 10 a.m. on a Friday morning US time. Another good one to check out as well. And I think if anybody else out there, just hit the thumbs up on the way out. Appreciate that. Anything else I should have asked or said, or you want to discuss quickly, Claire?
Oh, I'm good. That's it.
We're all good? Okay,
Yeah.
I think we're done. Again, thanks very much. Appreciate that. See you later, everyone, and next time around.